Hi, everybody. Just finishing up editing a video. Before we jump in, we're going to have some guests debating something about immigration. Then we're probably going to look at Super Tuesday stuff, but just giving probably 12 minutes for everybody to get in, and then conversation will ensue. Doing well. Uh, let's see. Good day from the UK. Good day. Guess that's Australian. Probably shouldn't do that. How are we this absolutely Super Tuesday? I don't know. I haven't been able to see what the results are so far. So we'll see. Sound check. Can you all hear me? How do I sound? Cool. Like I said, we've got about 10 minutes, and then the people will be here to chat about the border. And then again, we'll look at some Super Tuesday stuff. Mm, perfect. This will be the fifth video I recorded today. I did not expect to do that many, but the content was good today. It's popping. Mm-hmm. Nope, don't want that. Don't want that. Hard to hear. Hang on 1 second. What about now? Let's do headphones. Okay, cool. All right. Hmm. More volume, even now. Okay. What about now? What about now? How about tonight? Baby, for once, let's don't think twice. Any country music fans out there? I'm not much of one, but when you grow up with four sisters who love country music, you really don't get that much of a choice. That woke me up. Yeah, there you go. Destroys her. I'll let the guys know I'm live. Not me, but I have 5 kids that like country. Not sure that that happened. Yeah, I was like I said, I'm not really that big of a fan. So I like Reba McEntire. I loved Garth Brooks, Brooks and Dunn. So like some of '90s country. But I was never. I'm not a fan of bro country. Number one, bro country, and also like classic country. Either like I know a lot of people love Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson and like outlaw country and stuff like that. That's not my vibe. My favorite band is Journey, and then Def Leppard, and then Matchbox 20, then the Goo Goo Dolls. So I like First Aid Kit. What the hell is First Aid Kit? Not familiar with them. Let's see. Uh, like I said, we're just waiting probably 5 more minutes, and then these people are supposed to jump in, and then if not, we'll just go straight into Super Tuesday stuff. Mine too, Journey Matchbox. Yeah, get it, Jody. Scandinavian country duo. You're talking about First Aid Kit? Scandinavian country music. Right up my alley. Uh, all right, the hell with it. Putting in the tags. Like I said, people, it has been a crazy productive day for content. A lot of stuff to talk about. That's even before you get into Super Tuesday. But we're supposed to be having a conversation with one of my buddies, Cypher, from the Cypher Report. I've linked his channel before. Guy's a policy wonk on certain things like the border. And he'll be arguing with um, a a guy named Average Debate Enjoyer, he styles himself a Clinton Democrat. He's not. Nice guy, but he's not. He's pretty conservative. So, but yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be great. Okay, I'm done editing. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Super Tuesday, I'm scared for Biden. I mean, Biden's going to win the primary. Don't have to worry about that. Nikki Haley might take West Virginia and Vermont. Wow. Or no, wait. You said Virginia. Gotcha. Did you see Rational National's takedown of Joe Manchin? Not if it was recent. Joe Manchin, are you talking about because Manchin, um, a climate activist, confronted Manchin during some sort of meeting? And I guess Manchin was pretty chill, but of course he's terrible on the climate. So I understand why the guy was pissed. Climate activist. The climate guy said, go F yourself or F you or something like that. And Joe Manchin stood up and squared up. I don't know what he was going to do. Guy's like 90 years old. But then one of his staffers stepped in and just shoved, I mean, shoved, yeeted, as the kids would say, the climate activist just out of frame, just not just like sheepdogged him towards the door. I mean, hurled him from the room. That guy probably has the grounds to sue, I would expect. But what do I know? What do I know? Let's see here. Let's do some screen shares. And let's see what's going on in the world of politics. Okay, how do I share this window? All right. You all see? You had to back up. Anti-corporatist says I had to back up because I heard Manchin, a climate activist. I suppose in a way he is. He's just not an activist for the climate's benefit. He's a he's a climate activist in the way that he wants to kill it. Um, this is what my new video was about. This is the one I was editing. So I had 4 videos lined up for today already, which is about one more than usual. And then right before I was getting ready for this, I saw, and you know how I'm a sucker for Jessica Tarlov, my celebrity crush. She had a throwdown, so to say. I mean, it was a particularly unhinged episode of The Five, and it was awesome. So I'm like, oh, we got to cover it. We got to talk about it, or I'm gonna be thinking about it the whole time. Let's see. Carrie Lake on the news that Kirsten Sinema is retiring, or rather not seeking reelection. So I should be a stickler about this. Kirsten Sinema is not retiring, right? Because that suggests that she's leaving Congress prematurely, in much the same way that Kevin McCarthy did. He didn't complete his term. He just left early as a final FU to Republicans, which, by the way, completely support. That's great stuff. Kirsten Sinema is going to serve, serve out the remainder of her term. She's not seeking reelection, which again I'm fine with because I think the polling and the fundraising strongly suggests that Ruben Gallego is going to win. So with that in mind, Carrie Lake says, I covered Kirsten Sinema for years when I worked in the news. I also found her to be a likable person. What I admired most was her fearlessness in the face of the repeated attacks from the radicals who have taken over the DNC. These people threatened her, chased her into bathrooms, and made her life a living hell. But Sinema was unflappable. I have so much respect for that kind of courage. Yeah. So a couple of things. If I'm Kirsten Sinema and I find that Carrie Lake called me likable, I would have serious questions. I'd be like, what does that mean? If one of the least likable people in the history of civilization finds me likable, it's a bit of an indictment. And then the idea that radicals have taken over the DNC, yeah, doesn't mean much coming from Carrie Lake. That is hilarious. So the clan dad says, "Yep, they were all trying to escape from Tarlov." I don't know if you did this on purpose, but there's a video game called Escape from Tarkov. I've never played it, but I've just seen the thing. That is a great pun that I have never noticed and will be using. It's mine now. I don't know if you've ever seen Parks and Rec, where this douchebag character, Jeremy Jam, where he hears a good pun. He's like, huh, it's hilarious. I'm stealing it. That's mine now. I'm doing that with Escape from Tarlov. Thank you, Clan Dad. Sinema basically said that Democratic voters were actually paying attention, and there was no way she could win. Yeah, man, she was screwed. Like, they hate her guts out there, and I don't blame them. And I put this video out, and I know sometimes I get pushback because I don't hate Kirsten Sinema. Kirsten Sinema annoys me. I am glad to see her absence if we can replace her with a more cooperative Democrat. But I do want to be clear about this, that Kirsten Sinema was an ally of um, the Democratic Party. Wait a minute. Hang on 1 second. Oh, I'm an idiot. The debate's not happening until 7:30. 7:30. So we've got plenty of time to talk before the debate. Sorry about that. I was wondering why. I'm like, damn, these two are usually punctual. But I told them 7:30 so I could talk to you all in advance. Sorry. Time sucks. Again, 5 videos that I had to research and record and edit and upload. So I'm scrambled. But Kirsten Sinema voted with President Biden and the Democrats 94% of the time. And she didn't, when she switched parties to become independent, she still caucused with Democrats, right? She could have gone full Republican, and she didn't. So I stand by. It's simply a fact. It's a fact, and I hope you all take it to heart. Having Kirsten Sinema in Arizona is better than having a Republican in Arizona. Substantively better. But if we can kick her out and it's a purple state and get her replacement to be much more cooperative and more progressive, that's where it's at. Anti-corporatist says, yeah, I should use the graphics from Escape from Tarkov for that. Yeah, again, I'm just completely pilfering that from the Clan Dad. On my screen all day, She was originally a green, and now she's just queen of the greenbacks. Average debate enjoyer says he's here. He's listening. This is the guy who will be making the case against Cipher Report. He'll be joining soon. Yeah, Sinema voted with Dems 90% of the time, but on the things that really mattered, she screwed us. I wouldn't say all the things that really mattered. Again, she voted in favor of federal voting rights. She voted in favor of codifying Roe v. Wade. She voted in favor of infrastructure and time and time again. The thing that she did that screwed us, I think she voted against $15 minimum wage. She didn't just vote to not do a filibuster carve out. She voted against it. But other than that, she's been pretty cooperative. My beef with her is that she would not vote to break the filibuster on these crucial matters. So, old Scotty says that Sinema seat will probably stay Democrat. Manchin will probably swing Republican. What's going to happen with Menendez? Yeah, that's my assessment of it. Manchin, we have absolutely no chance whatsoever of replacing him with a Democrat. This is the best we can ever do. And again, I'd rather have Manchin in West Virginia than any Republican because he still voted with President Biden the vast majority of the time. Sinema, I agree. It stands a good chance that we'll flip to a more progressive Democrat. Menendez, I don't know, man. So he's not going to resign. And a lot of Democrats have publicly called on him to resign much more quickly and in much greater numbers than it ever took Republicans to call on George Santos to resign. But congressional leadership, like Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate leader, he hasn't called on Menendez to resign unless something's changed in the past 12 hours. President Biden has not called on Menendez to resign. Menendez should resign. And we could then replace Menendez because he is the senator for New Jersey, and we have a Democratic governor in New Jersey. So 91 viewers, but only 41 likes. What's up, Latavian? Hey, buddy, you should be in here. Hey, Matt, why don't you pop in here too, since you're a border policy wonk too, if you've got time, and because it's not going to be like a formal debate between average debate enjoyer and Cipher. It's just going to be a conversation. Latavian, who helped, by the way, folks, organize the entire Ohio canvassing event. Sorry, again, brain lapse. He was he's a border policy geek too. Hi from Tennessee. Love me some Biden. Voted for him today and in November. Did you see his announcement today about capping credit card late fees at $8? Yeah, I think the average or something is like 30 something, and he's capping it at 8. Good. Ted Cruz is about to have his ass evicted. Good. And hopefully with the rest of them too. Actually, as a matter of fact, let's find out about that. What's going on? Because I saw that somewhere. How is flying Ted Cruz doing? Ted Cruz, all red. I saw somewhere. Hey, there's a boy Luke. Lucas Beasley. Not enough people are talking about the very real possibility Colin Allred defeats Ted Cruz in November. I thought I saw some sort of like update on this. Let me find it here. Ted Cruz, Colin Allred. Latavian says it's going to be my intro every time. What time is the convo? 7:30. So 23 minutes. What is, and why did I'm telling you, I saw news somewhere about good news for Colin Allred. Now I can't find it, but if somebody wants to link me. Chuck says, so proud of you, Josiah. Love your kindness and brilliant works against hate, evil, and bigotry. Thank you. Supreme Court pissing me off. Yeah, me too, man. Me too. Why am I blanking on his name? The guy who lost to Johnson, Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. Yeah, I can't remember. I wish I could remember a pre-Johnson world. Yeah. That's interesting. Makes me think this person's a bot. Any guesses on how Texas Republicans will vote? Trump versus Haley? It's going to be Trump. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mandela Barnes. That's it. That's it right there. That's the Ron Johnson opponent. Yeah. Completely forgot about him. Okay. Well, I can't find this news that I know I saw at some point about Flying Ted. Uh-oh. Virginia goes for Biden. Not surprised. Yeah, this is something else too. So Bill Hemmer from the Fox Propaganda Network, he's complaining that other news networks are cutting their coverage of Donald Trump's speeches to fact check. Well, number one, they should. Number two, Fox News actually does that on occasion. Neil Cavuto, especially, he will interrupt Donald Trump's broadcast to fact check him in real time, which is good. But yeah, the guy's complaining. He's like, if you're only going to show 5 to 10 minutes, you should just take news out of your name. And then he goes on to say, we'd be absolutely fair to Biden. We'd be absolutely fair to Biden. Harris Faulkner says the same thing. Yeah, we're always fair to Biden. Lady, come on, please. Jan Riley says 45. Trump was also ranked as 45th worst president. 45. Honestly, Trump is the 45th president, but he should be ranked 51st. There aren't 51 presidents, but that's the joke. Just the right amount of time before the discussion? For what? For what? Tommy Lawrence says, we have an invasion at our southern border that is costing our country billions, and your sleepy president is going after junk fees. Unbelievable. Listen, our sleepy president is your sleepy president, too. He's got Air Force One, the White House, the Oval Office, the nuclear launch codes. And as a matter of fact, Tommy, my president is, in fact, your president's president. How you like that? She is the worst. She also admitted recently that the Biden impeachment thing is a dead end, as well she should. Over-the-counter birth control. Yeah, so listen, mifepristone, as a reminder, folks, Texas challenged the legality of mifepristone, and the Supreme Court of the United States is going to take up oral arguments about it sometime this month. As a reminder, okay, it's not good. It's not good. We have a right-wing Supreme Court, a conservative supermajority. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to give this thing the boot. That would be super stupid. But listen, they're not elected. They're impeaching them is hella unlikely. A Supreme Court justice has never been impeached. What's the cost? Republicans don't care. Republicans are happy about this. The more I think about it, the more I say that I think history will say that in modern history, the 2016 election was the most consequential in modern U.S. history, right? In terms of what it unleashed, particularly by way of that Supreme Court. And eventually, and maybe some of you will want to weigh in, I'm going to have a conversation with Pisco and a couple of others about this court. Pisco, obviously, my for those of you who aren't from Destiny's community or familiar with it, he's my lawyer buddy. He's been on this channel before, and he's pretty liberal, pretty progressive, and he has his issues with this court, believe me. But he's also an attorney, right? So, and he's a very, very much an institutionalist with respect to this court. But the more I think about it, I'm just like, I don't know. I really don't know. We're supposed to have separation of powers and checks and balances in which you have like the conventional wisdom is you're supposed to have three co-equal branches. In reality, the founding fathers intended Congress to be the first among equals, to be the individually most powerful branch of Congress, and they forfeited a lot of their powers to the president. But it seems like as long as both Congress and the president are deferential to the Supreme Court, You make the argument that the Supreme Court is de facto the most powerful court because, I mean, they can strike down laws as unconstitutional. They can strike down executive orders as unconstitutional. They can issue orders as a result of their ruling to the executive branch and to Congress. The only way that Congress can override a Supreme Court ruling, at least based on our understanding today, is a constitutional amendment, right? Because if the Constitution's amended, the Supreme Court can't strike down an amendment as unconstitutional. It's basically the final hand on top that Congress has. But you need 2/3 of both chambers of Congress and 3/4 of the states. And so it's like, is Congress really supreme? And then the president, the only thing he can really do on paper is just ignore the Supreme Court, right? Which maybe Biden should. That's what I said about the 14th Amendment or the debt ceiling thing. I thought that Biden should call Republicans bluff and say, no, I'm not going to. You either raise the debt ceiling, as you did with Trump, again and again and again and again. Do it for me, especially since you contributed to the debt. Or I'm just going to keep ordering the Treasury to take out loans to pay America's bills. And if you want to take me to the Supreme Court and basically order me to default on the United States economy and trigger this global economic catastrophe, be my guest. I dare you. I dare you to do that, because I don't think the Supreme Court would have done it, because it would have ruined them financially. But let's see. Wildcat 2221 got approved today to be an election judge for the general election here in Minnesota. Pumped to do it. It'll be my first time ever working an election. Kudos to you, my friend. Kudos to you. Nonpartisan election workers have they've got a challenge, especially with the way that MAGA has been threatening and everything. Good for you. That's really awesome. I would say the 2000 election was the most consequential. Maybe, but I feel like there was plenty of time for course correction in 2016, because after 2016, again, Republicans picked up 3 Supreme Court justices in one term. I think Bush put 3 on the bench, but I think that was over the course of 2 terms. Pisco, never heard of him, nor should you. He's a cad. Pierre Holmes, I just entered the chat. What did I miss? Absolutely nothing of consequence, except I'm solving America's problems single-handedly. And he's right. The Supreme Court rules. How dare you, anti-corporatist? How dare you, sir? Tom Waits for No Man. I like the pun. Tom Waits, of course, famous musician for you Philistines who are unaware. And a good actor, too. He's in 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula. He plays Renfield. They have zero oversight. Yes, precisely. They just get to do whatever the F they want. They don't have to worry about election or re-election, impeachment, enforceable codes of ethics. They don't have to worry about any of that. Very true. If HRC won, we wouldn't be dealing with MAGA as much today. Correct. In 10 to 15 years, once this generation of simpleton dies out or becomes irrelevant, we will see a wave of constitutional amendments. A felon can be president, really? So again, this fact I bring up all the time. We have had, I kept saying 11,000, but it's actually like closer to 12,000. 12,000 attempts to amend the United States Constitution over 250 years. And over 250 years, we have 27 amendments. That is a fraction of 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 a success rate. We have the hardest. Our Constitution is by far the hardest to amend in the world, and that needs to change. Supreme Court has had major overreach. Agreed. The Supreme Court can make political rulings and hide behind the law. That's some power. Yeah, did you see Justice Barrett's concurrence on the Supreme Court decision? I covered it in a video. She basically says, listen, we're making political considerations. It's a fraught political time. Let's everybody come together, and please, if you have complaints, just keep them to yourself right now. It's insane. Or stack it, but needs Congress to do it. Yeah. So right now there's a federal statute which prevents the composition of the Supreme Court capped at 9. They would have to repeal it. That's the most doable. Excuse me. Biden wins Iowa, 91% of the vote. Go Biden. 91, incidentally, is also the same age. I'm pretty sure I'm not joking. That Chuck Grassley, the Republican senator from Iowa. I think that's exactly how old he is. Gavin Newsom / Jasmine Crockett, 20. I love Jasmine Crockett. She's amazing. Crossing fingers, Dems hold on to the Senate and take back the House. We are favored to take back the House, which is good. But the Senate's going to be tough. The Senate's going to be real tough. Hello, watching from Australia. I love watching and listening to you talking about common sense about America's unfortunate political issues. I worry about the real threat to your democracy. Vote blue. Precisely. Thank you from commenting from down under. Mifepristone will be available in states where legal within the next few weeks. Yep, over the counter through CVS and Walgreens, I believe. What do you think of Jack Teixeira taking a 16-year sentence for doing exactly what Trump did with classified docs? That's the Discord guy, right? Yeah. Well, as we know, people are held to different standards when it comes to classified documents. Not just Trump, by the way, but also senators and vice presidents and things like that. Reagan, Biden. I mean, it's just like the permissiveness that I mean, that's something that people on the right and the left have complained about with respect to the documents cases, is that if you're just a low-ranking person and you get caught with this shit, it's a completely different world. You know what? Yeah, let's let's bring up Super Tuesday results. I'm sure the New York Times does this. Let's zoom out a little bit. Let's do live updates. Republican delegate, 273 for Trump and 43 for Haley. Oof. If Trump and Biden wind up having debates, would they allow Trump to interrupt Biden constantly again? Probably. I don't think people would have the stones to turn Biden or Trump's microphones off. Term limits for SCOTUS? Yeah. Term limits, elections, expansion, and also veto overrides. So that's the other thing in which I firmly believe. Many other advanced democratic republics, they actually will allow the legislature to override like judicial vetoes, or it requires supermajorities from the judiciary to basically strike down a law, not just a simple majority. So yeah, there should be major restrictions on the United States Supreme Court. What do you make of former President Jimmy Carter? Do you think he's the best former president in U.S. history? Are you glad at 99 he's still with us? He's been in hospice for more than a year. I think as a person, Jimmy Carter has been the best president in U.S. history. I think that he had numerous challenges during his one and only term, and he was rat fucked, to borrow a phrase, by the Republicans, by Ronald Reagan's campaign over the Iran hostages. I mean, just brutal. There was an expose that came out early 2023. I had to think about it, March 2023, because I was in Wisconsin doing canvassing for Justice Protasewicz, and yeah, he got screwed. Let's see. Expand SCOTUS. Again, agreed. Josiah knows who Tom Waite is. How old are you? I'm telling you, an old soul. Journey's my favorite band. I love Journey. Journey and Def Leppard are touring this year for like the third time. Oh, let me tell you, I'm gonna be there. Senate chickened out and did not subpoena Thomas. Yeah, that's the other thing. I feel like I genuinely believe we would sooner subpoena a sitting president or attempt to than a Supreme Court justice. Huge crush on Jasmine Crockett. My girlfriend might be watching, so I can't comment, but also, yeah. Let's see. Scroll down. Yeah, SCOTUS can basically declare any law or executive action unconstitutional, given it's virtually impossible to impeach justice in this political climate. The SCOTUS is crazily overpowered. Yeah, 100%. 100%. What up?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. How does Cypher sound, and how does his voice sound relative to mine in terms of volume? Please let us know. Chat. I think SCOTUS should be an elected position. Yes. I think I absolutely support electing. I'm pretty sure every state in the United States, or at least the vast and overwhelming majority, they all elect their Supreme Court justices, and many other advanced democracies do as well across the world. Talk, Cypher. Keep talking, buddy.
Hey, hello. Can y'all hear me okay? Am I coming in too loud?
Keep talking. Read poetry if you want.
She sells seashells down by the seashore. Y'all see all the stuff coming from SCOTUS?
His volume is a bit louder, but good. So I'm gonna knock you down. Just don't worry. I'll knock you down. You're good. Just leave yours alone.
Oh, okay.
All right. Keep talking, Cypher.
How everybody is doing today? I see there's a lot of people in your chat. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Appreciate that.
Got a very active community here.
You know, it's starting to pick up. So I very rarely live stream. I'm trying to do a bit more of it. And we'll see if the numbers match. I get people pick on me. They're like, it's completely out of step with your subscriber count. I'm like, yeah, but it's a completely different world that I'm just now breaking into, really.
Right. Yeah.
So, he's a bit loud. Ella Yerman. Hey, so real quick, Ella has a great show called Late Stage with Ella Yerman. You all should definitely check it out. As a matter of fact, when I'm done here, I will also link that on my my community page. So she is a Some More News writer. So Cody Johnson, she's worked with Cody Johnson.
Oh, nice.
Very entertaining performer, an excellent writer. She agrees that The Rise of Skywalker is the best Star Wars sequel. So we're super bonded in that respect. So let's see here. Let's see. He's still a little loud.
If I'm still loud, I can adjust my gain.
Because I've got like plenty of stuff to move my shit down. I don't want you to have to.
All right.
Steve Skeletal. Hi, Steve Skeletal. Okay, we're gonna bring in Christina Rakovan. Steve Perry held my hand and sang to me when I saw them in concert 40 years ago. Steve Perry, the greatest rock singer of all time, the lead singer of Journey throughout their golden years, a countertenor, had like a 5-octave range, just insane, and the best live singer in rock music ever. Okay, so I'm gonna bring in Tyler, aka Average Debate Enjoyer. But I'm not giving him the bottoms. To hell with that. Actually, no, he's actually best positioned for it because it cuts me off. Damn.
How's my sound?
No, I'm gonna give it to Cypher instead. Seniority. How does Tyler sound? Tyler,
how's my sound?
You're a little loud on my end, but it matters with the chat here. So,
chat,
like talk at length.
Oh, 2 puppers. I got a pit bull back there too. He's half dingo and half some sort of husky, dingo husky.
It's an interesting combo.
I knocked him down a bit. How does he sound now? Keep talking, buddy.
Yeah, I definitely need a better mic. I have one of these performance ones. It was only $50. It's trash. I'm going to invest in that eventually, but I agree. Thanks, chat. You guys are great.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I did not, well, actually, wait a minute. I forgot that I invited Matt. So we're going to take a few minutes and let Matt jump in case he wants to. But yeah, prior to this, we were talking about the Supreme Court. Cypher, I didn't get a chance to have you weigh in on it. What do you think about aggressive reforms in the United States Supreme Court?
I think we need them, but I don't necessarily think we need them for maybe necessarily the reasons other people do. I'm not necessarily sold on the idea of having a Supreme Court be elected, but it's it can't be any worse than what we currently have. I'm more concerned about using the threat of packing the court in order to get a permanent reform so that they're not on there for life and other things that is needed. For example, if we are not going to elect them, you can't maintain a vacancy for more than like 6 months. Congress doesn't act in 6 months, and you get a temporary 1-year appointment or something so that it maintains whatever the case may be, or maybe one of the other party's justices has to stand out, like so that it's even. I don't know, something like that. That's where I'm at with it.
While I look for this thread, Tyler, do you want to weigh in?
I'd be open to hear like more specifically what you're talking about, because I think Mitch McConnell did with Merrick Garland was some of the shadiest. Good politics, but politics aside, morality wise, it was one of the shadiest things that I've seen happen in politics of my adult life. It was one of the biggest, like, uh-oh moments for me in terms of like people being shitty to each other in politics. So I would like to see something like that never be able to happen again. But in terms of packing the court, once you open that door to pass your
It
policy and the other side does it
no,
too.
it what it is that I believe the threat of packing the court is really the only way to get Congress to actually pass a constitutional amendment to prevent it from ever happening. So you say, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to pack the court. I have 60 votes on my side. We're going to, just pack the court. Fuck y'all,
Mhm.
because you changed the rules on it. Or you can get on board with us making constitutional amendments and get the Constitution amended through Congress with that threat. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm
So
at with it.
my beef with this is if we keep the court the way it is via constitutional amendment, that's just going to lock in another generational Republican advantage, right? Because, you know, I see what you're saying. Like, to me, the goal would be to pack it in the sense of making it more like rebalance. So you could make the argument that,
Well,
historically speaking, there was a justice for every circuit. We have like 13 circuits. Ergo,
yeah,
there should be there are
in
13 justices. Then cap it at a constitutional amendment. Say,
That's what I'm
listen,
saying, though. You
yeah,
need
yeah,
the threat of a packed court to get any of those reforms. You're not going to get any of them permanently reformed in there without a constitutional amendment. And the only way to get the constitutional amendment through Congress is to have a slight majority
yeah.
in
But
both the House and Senate with the threat of packing the court, unless the other side joins in to reform it, so neither side can play the fuckery.
but my understanding is what you're saying is threaten to pack the court unless Republicans agree to a constitutional amendment to keep the court the way it is. But if we do
No,
that,
not the way it is. There's
okay,
got to be
got
reforms. So,
gotcha.
no lifetime appointments. So you get you only get 12 years on the court, or I think it was 12 to 18. I think is the breakdown. And if one in that time frame, basically every party would get to have one nomination for at least a few years, and then after they get that nomination, it's not as dire because it doesn't matter if they get appointed, because in another 4 or 5 years you have another chance to get another Supreme Court justice. Like, it requires all these things, but the only way to get that
Fair.
is through court packing.
Yeah,
through threat.
I put out this post like with citations and stuff 8 months ago on Destiny's Reddit about why the Democrats should fuck with the court, and it goes into the history of how the court composition's been changed. You have a lot of people who like spread all kinds of disinformation about the United States Supreme Court, like uh, it was never, the composition never changed whatsoever. And actually it changed multiple times, including by the founding fathers. Thomas Jefferson changed the composition of the Supreme Court for political advantage. So it's in the history of the U.S. Supreme Court. It's just been relatively static since the end of the Civil War. But yeah, I think that with anything, to Tyler's point, there's always a risk. But when the alternative, it's like, well, it's almost, I don't know. It's like what the way current things are currently, Democrats are screwed. And then it's like, well, if you do this, it may screw Democrats in this way too. Well, it's like, yeah, but if the alternative is certain screwed them, then there's no point in not acting. I think you should act as strategically as possible. But the idea that, hey, the alternative is a risk, well, then you have to make the present much more palatable. That would be my pitch, to Republicans. If God willing, there is eventually in the next 10 years or so a more of an appetite to fuck with the Supreme Court. If Republicans say, hey, don't fuck with the court because it's just going to open a can of worms, then I would say, then Republicans, you've got to sweeten the deal for me now. Otherwise, I am going to fuck with the court, because at least there's a possibility to screw you all over. So.
For sure.
One thing I'd be worried about, one thing, is self-regulation. When Obama tried to regulate Congress's insider trading abilities, and when Trump tried to do term limits, which we found out later were unconstitutional, but before we knew that, when Trump was trying to do term limits, Congress pushed back from both of those presidents. They did not let those presidents legislate or push regulations onto them. So I feel like you'd need a constitutional amendment, because I don't feel like the courts would allow themselves to be policed like that if it's not in the Constitution.
So
Exactly.
the problem is that's where the Supreme Court, then the question is, okay, you and what army? See, this is my beef with the court. The court is OP. They're a paper tiger, right? Right now, it's like There's a great, I don't know if you've ever seen The Quick and the Dead, but it's a Western movie, and Gene Hackman's the villain, and it's got Sharon Stone is the main character, and Russell Crowe from Gladiator is the male lead. And actually, Leonardo DiCaprio is also in the movie too. And he has this great speech when he's facing off against Gene Hackman in a showdown. He's like, the only reason he's invincible is because you all think he is. And it's kind of the same thing with the Supreme Court. Biden or any president in theory could pull a Lincoln and go, you and what army? And the Supreme Court would be like, please obey our orders. And that's where, to me, I'm looking forward to my conversation with Pisco about this, because the way I look at it now, the Supreme Court's asking for a lot of good faith from the other two branches when I don't feel that it's showing a lot of good faith. So I would support a president going, listen, if you want me to take your rulings as gospel, then you can't just be doing this shit, because I have no incentive to do it, right? I am putting all my eggs that when you all intervene and, act in a very partisan way, that you're doing it in deliberate good faith. But I also happen to notice a partisan bent here. And if that's the case, I'm really not incentivized to play by your rules. I think as a general practice, Congress or the Supreme Court their default should be deferential. They should be, basically, it should clench their collective sphincters to consider defying the president and Congress. Not that they never should. They should basically, with great power comes great responsibility. They should be super hesitant to defy the elected branches. That's my position on it.
I'd like to ask, I'd like to ask somebody though that's in government, like, what actual mechanisms do these like if Trump ignores Congress or the president ignores Congress, what can Congress actually do if the request made of them wasn't illegal? Well, in that case, I know that they have the power of the purse. They don't have to fund a lot of the president's ambitions if
Right.
they feel as though they're being ignored. I'd like to see maybe there's some ways that Congress or the president could check the courts on a lesser level to that degree. I just don't know them.
There's no way on paper for the president to check the courts after he's already made his appointments, right? Because they'll say that's one check is he puts whoever's there on the court. Well, that's the president making the appointment. If President Tyler fills the Supreme Court with a bunch of far right lunatics, which of course he would, knowing Tyler, and then President Josiah comes in after Tyler and has to deal with Tyler's court, then where's my check on the court? The only option I have is to ignore the court and say, you and what army, if you defy me too much. And so that's where, to me, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with some attorneys about this, because right now it looks like the Supreme Court is the final hand on top, which erodes the entire notion of three co-equal branches if you have one truly dominant branch. And if there is supposed to be one truly dominant branch, it's Congress, according to the founding fathers. They're the ones with the most checks against the other branches and the fewest checks against them. And it makes no sense whatsoever that the Supreme Court, the unelected lifetime appointments, would be the final arbiter. So the more the Supreme Court does this shit, the more I'm inclined to say maybe the other two branches should start swinging their weight around a bit more and checking this court. But so anyway, that's my opinion. But now let's talk about the border. The only reason we're talking about this is because you all were blowing me up in my replies. So what's I should have brought up the tweet, and I'll do it. But who wants to recap, while I'm looking for this, in good faith, what the disagreement was about the border?
I hope you remember. I don't remember how it all started. I just kind of remember what we were talking about.
It started basically, I think, me saying that the Republicans should have passed the Senate bill. And the reason being is that it was primarily a Republican wish list. Whether or not that is how Republicans now view it because of Trump is a separate question. But you're not going to get another harder immigration bill than what was negotiated in the Senate. But other than that, I don't recall much of the actual back and forth on it. We were kind of disagreeing about whether or not the HB2 was good. which is what the debate's going to be about. But the
I remember there
Republicans'
was a-
alternative
Okay,
doesn't
I've
really
got it.
fix anything.
We were
I've got
yeah.
it.
There was a big part we were talking about the Biden's visa programs, as well as letting in potentially 6 to 8 million people, and there was a part where we were talking about how you didn't like the guy that founded the organization as well. I
Oh,
remember
are you?
that.
You're talking. Okay, yeah. CIS, Fair Numbers USA, and there's like one other one. This guy, Jonathan Trayton or Trotton, can't remember how to pronounce his name. Founded back starting in the 80s. Just the whole conservative think tank. We're gonna fund as many of these as possible to look like that we have consensus. Bullshit. So
Okay, so I want to set the stage
there's a
up here
lot of
now
stuff.
that I found the tweet. Okay, so here's what happened. Mark Thiessen, who is this right-wing commentator on Fox News, went back and forth with the one liberal panelist about the border issue. And he took the position that President Biden, through executive authority, can, quote, secure the border, quote, today, and doesn't need any legislation. And I made a post. I said, well, consider that courts rejected multiple Trump actions at the border. Remain in Mexico would require Mexico's cooperation. They've said they'll refuse. And Trump, during his presidency, asked for congressional support on border issues, basically just completely torpedoing Mark's proposition. Even if you think that Biden, there should be different kinds of legislation, which is maybe what Tyler's point is, it is a lie. It is a fact. It is a lie to suggest that Biden, with a stroke of his pen, can solve this issue at the border. So Mark Thiessen lied, period, full stop. Now, there may be a back and forth, which is what hopefully you two will get into, about what should be done at the border. But I just want to say, if anyone, hopefully, Tyler, you're not going to say this. If anyone says that Biden can, with a stroke of a pen, solve the issue at the border, they're lying. So that's what triggered
Yeah.
this.
It depends on what the issue at the border is. I would say that, and I'm guessing here on the estimates, I'm going to use their number of 6 to 8 million. What the Biden administration wants to do is let those people in and get them working immediately. So there's no issue for the Biden administration. This is the policy that they're setting up. This is how that they're interpreting how the DHS's parole authority. This is how they're interpreting different things. There was a law changed by Obama in 2010. I got it all in my notes. We'll gradually get to, but the issue for Republicans is they're saying an invasion. I am not going to argue that point. It's stupid. It's really stupid. The actual issue with the voters is that we're getting more people here from other countries, legally, potentially illegally. We'll see how the court cases turn out or whatever. We're getting too many people here that are flooding cities. And it's a problem. And a lot of them are coming with crime because in countries like Venezuela, they're actually expediting their criminals up. I don't know if the government's actually doing that or the criminals are in fear of persecution, but we're seeing a lot of a Venezuelan gang I can't say the name of. In New York City, they've been involved in 3 violent incidents in immigration shelters in just like the last 2 months. So we're getting a lot of bad hombres, and let's just say they're not sending their best.
Yeah. So I all I'm going to say is I hope you're not regurgitating Trump lines about the people crossing the border. I have no doubt that there's a subset, like any large population, that we would not want in this country. Just like there's a subset of this population that we don't want in this country, but they're citizens regardless. I'm talking about natural born American citizens. But I hope you're not suggesting that the vast majority, that you're like casting aspersions over millions of people. You're not doing that, right? Because this is going to be a short conversation. I don't want to violate TOS.
I don't want to know what
Yeah.
aspersions. Like I don't. In terms of immigration, I would agree with the Biden administration that we kind of need these workers. I just don't like the way he's bringing them in with the visa programs that he's using, with the tactics that he's using, with expanded definitions. I got to look at my notes. In 2010, Obama passed a
Yeah, but well,
bill.
hang on. But so hang on. So because again, Cypher is going to be your primary opponent. I'm just trying to set the parameters, and I said that we agree that when Fox News and Republicans say that Biden can solve the border issue with executive action, we all agree that's a lie. right?
Well, I don't think executive action is it. I do agree Biden could do a lot of things differently
That's
on the
different.
border
But see,
through
this is
DHS policy.
right. So then
So
the
I don't
answer is
know.
yes. The answer is yes. You agree that when people say Biden can
I don't,
solve the issue with executive action, it's a lie. But that you think Biden can do more than what he's
I
doing.
don't honestly, I don't honestly know what his powers are through executive action, what the limits are, what the laws are. So I would lean towards no. I'd lean towards you being right. But if somebody presented me with something that showed I was wrong, I would happily accept it.
Yeah.
I'm not
So,
confident enough to say yes.
so I'll jump in on this. So to many Republicans, not Tyler here, because he's clearly a little bit more moderate than some of the MAGA base. A lot of Republicans want these people to be simply sitting in prison while they wait their trials, whether that is an asylum hearing or what have you. To them, Biden could solve the immigration issue by simply, quote unquote, following the law and putting these people in detention centers. Now, we don't have enough detention centers, which is why the Senate bill had detention center money in it. But that is what they're saying that can happen. So that's what they think, because they wrongly believe that you can deter people from trying to cross the border by putting people in prison. You can't. That is not going to happen. It doesn't work. A person was on Fresh Air 2 or 3 weeks ago. He wrote a new book. I don't remember his name, but Everyone That Is There Is Here is roughly the name of the title of the book. And it explores the entire immigration issue since 1960, once immigration laws were changed for the better, and how people in United States policy created a lot of push factors in Latin American countries to push them into the United States. And in this book, there was 20 or so interviews that he had with people that had been detained, put in jail or prison, depending on the severity of the crime, and then released back to their country. And they simply turned around and went back to try to come into the United States. We're talking people deported all the way to Panama, making the trek again through the Gulch, through all those countries to get back in the United States, because that's how desperate they are because of how badly the other countries are that they're coming from. So this idea that we're going to simply imprison our way out of this problem is fool's errand, and it's not going to work. But a lot of Republicans believe that it will.
I'd say most of them agree with you on that. Because, okay, so we're talking about 4 different categories of people here. So we got to take the traditional illegal immigrant, the person that hops the border, never gets caught by security. They're called gotaways. We get about 600,000 to 700,000 of those a year. So roughly 2 million of those have come in since Biden took office. I want to say the worst year in the last decade was actually in 2019 under Trump. That was the most gotaways in the last, at least since Obama. Yeah. So, but it's about 700,000 a year, 600,000 a year. It's not that varying, worse the best. So that's the illegal immigration. Now, what the Republicans are claiming, and I'm more of a Clinton Democrat, independent, so like I don't really know where I fall nowadays, but what the Republicans are claiming is the laws that are being not followed are Biden's visa plans. There's 20 Republican states suing him right now for his one visa plan that allows 360,000 visas from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. And that's about 30,000 people a month. And again, from Venezuela, we see a lot of them have a very high criminality rate as Venezuela's criminality rate drops. So they're kind of sending some bad people here that aren't being vetted properly. And they're doing this through an application that the Biden administration invented by bypassing Congress. So they're saying that this visa program is illegal.
It is illegal, but it's illegal for a number of different reasons. One, you can't turn people away for asylum claims by the courts. Courts overturned that during the Trump administration. Biden, the reason that the CPB1 app was changed into not created. Sorry, the apps existed for a while, but why there was things added to it was in order to try to make the people that are trying to come into the country, instead of having this wave of people doing it, it's going to like stagger it more. Because you're telling people to wait, 9+ months to get their hearing, and it kind of pre-processes them while they get their hearing. But it's saying if you try to cross the border while you're under this, your asylum is going to be instantly denied. Your claim to get in the United States is going to be instantly denied. You're going to be instantly deported. So if we see you, you're deported, and you have to wait. And that is designed to try to make the border crossings more manageable under the current funding and personnel that is currently there.
Cool.
To me, this is a great program.
Sorry.
No, to me, I'm just saying that to me, this is a great program because it's trying to actually tackle what the crisis actually is, which is a surge of people trying to cross. It's not saying that they're going to admit every single person that applies for this, because a lot of them are going to be summarily denied. And there's also there was this deal with Mexico that, like, if we let these people in, you have to take so many people back. So anybody that would turn around and deport back, it's a 1-to-1. I had a really weird debate with a libertarian. Was like, it's 0 people coming. I'm like, yeah, no, but it's more people coming. Beside the point. Either way, it's designed to be done in a way that allows some people to come in a more orderly fashion while also expediting the removals.
I get what you're saying, and I get the intent behind it. What I'm trying to talk about more is the intent of the Biden administration and DHS and Mayorkas. They are reading these provisions in a way that allows them to open up the amount of people we take in on visas substantially. And legality aside, we can put the legality aside for now. Just looking at the intent of the Biden administration with these actions, they are trying to pull these people in. It's not something that's I find deniable when you look at the totality of what they've been doing on the border. They're trying to get people to come into the country to work. Obviously, it's good for the economy. Now, there is the leftist argument about how there's second-class citizens that don't get all the rights and blah, 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 which is, whatever a point. But at the end of the day, we do need the workers, and I am for more people coming here. I just wish it was done. And, let's, instead of 1.25 legal immigrants a year, why don't we open that up to 3 million a year? And then we don't have to do all these visa programs and bring people in ways where they aren't vetted properly. We have a great immigration system for legal immigrants. Just open that up. And that's kind of my point here is like,
so again, as this isn't a formal debate, this is going to be a conversation. I don't want to overwhelm you, Tyler, but number one, I just reject the idea that we have a great immigration system. Immigration experts around the world say that ours is entirely too convoluted. It's out of date. As a matter of fact,
hey, Tyler,
please don't blow in the microphone.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so even Republicans admit it too, that it needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated to modern times and modern rates of immigration and modern standards in 40 years. It needs to be changed. So I completely disagree that we have a great legal immigration system here. But the other thing is, I'm sorry,
I meant the results. Like, we don't take in terrorists on our borders and shit. I'm sorry.
He means like the processing, the vetting, how we deal with illegal immigration, not necessarily how we actually do everything else.
Sure. I'm sure we have an excellent vetting program. I'll agree with you there. But as far as the visa program, now maybe Cypher has more information than me because this is not like my exclusive area. But as I mentioned to you, Tyler, my beef with this is the visa program, which is currently being litigated, has never been, from what I have heard and seen from Republicans, at the center of their claims about Biden's actions or inactions at the border. I don't hear Ted Cruz and others saying he's increasing the number of visas at the border extrajudiciously. That's not what I hear. What I hear instead is I hear about Title 42. I hear about Remain in Mexico. So I would either just completely reject your claim or invite you the opportunity to reframe it, because you are hanging all of the Republican arguments on this litigated visa program when that is not.
No, he's not doing that.
This is just step one. That being said, you are right. You're not going to catch a Ted Cruz. You're not going to catch somebody that's talking to the masses, dig into the weeds about a potentially illegal visa program. I had to kind of go into like the Republican right-wing think tanks to get some of these more coherent arguments. When I listen to people on the radio, even National Review, who's actually pretty good with information, they never dive into the details of this. I had to really go and dig to find out what they meant when they said a lot of these vague things like Biden's not following the laws on the border and Biden's doing things legally.
How do you know that's what they're referring to?
Well, in HB2 specifically, they say that they're outlawing the ability. Well, they're making it illegal for the ability of Customs and Border Patrol and ICE to use these apps in that way. So it is one of the things that they're saying. It's
Cypher, now I'm going to have to pick on you. If they're proposing it in legislation which hasn't passed, then that means it's not illegal, which means that they say that Biden is not following the law,
so
they're lying.
So when they say that he's not following the law, again, it's one of those situations where it's like what the visa waiver program is I mean, it's the Biden administration has the ability to manage flows of immigration to a degree, but they do view these things as being illegal because Congress didn't pass it. Whether it's illegal or not, I'm not entirely sure. You would have to ask my
with
friend Nick
respect,
Allen.
so I appreciate that, but with respect, that doesn't address my point at all, because my issue is not, do they have a legitimate basis with which to disagree with how Biden is managing the visa program. I'm saying it's not at the core of their criticisms, because otherwise it'd be plastered all over every talking point, period. We'd be hearing about it nonstop. Tyler admitted that he had to dig for it. So I reject that claim, number one.
Sure.
And then the second thing I reject is the idea that it's illegal. It's illegal if and when the courts decide it's illegal. So I appreciate you coming to his rescue on this, but it doesn't address my points. So now that I've established that it's not illegal and that it's not at the heart of their claims, now you can move on.
I think the word lie is malicious and implies intent. They believe it's illegal, and if they didn't, they wouldn't waste time, money, and effort to sue. Well, maybe they would for a PR stunt, but in an ideal world, most people wouldn't waste time, money, and effort to sue somebody if they truly were just lying. So I do believe they think it's illegal. And again, because they skipped Congress, this is the first time we've seen a visa program like this, the DHS made up out of whole cloth on their own and allocated money that Congress is supposed to be in charge of. And I wanted to leave that aside, the illegality of it, because it's unsettled right now, and more just speak to the
And that's fair, by the way. That's fair. We don't know if it's legal or not because it's currently being litigated. So let's set that aside and you may continue.
Yes, you're right. Most Republicans are going to give you the 3-4 word talking lines like lock her up and blah, blah, blah. You're never going to hear most of the points I'm making from even Republican commentators online. I was watching, I don't want to say his name, he's a really nice guy, but I was watching a right winger that I do debates with on Wick a lot go on to another program, and somebody asked him where those 6 million immigrants came from, and he just froze up. He couldn't tell them any details for the point that he was making. And it's like, bro, if you don't even know the answers to that, how do you expect to win a debate? So that's kind of why I tried to dig so hard in that. Maybe some right wingers will watch this and be like, "Oh, that's the point I'm looking for." So I don't know, but
so then what's the I guess let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. What's the crux of your disagreements here? Because my understanding is, we were talking about this in the context of the bipartisan border bill. I think you referred to it recently, Tyler, as a weak bill. I don't know where Cypher is on it. So let's turn our attention to the bipartisan border bill from the Senate. And if you want to juxtapose it to HB2 from the House of Representatives, that's fine. But since Tyler spoke last, Cypher, what's your position on these two bills?
So from a more of an open border lefty position, the Senate bill is very tough. It basically limits asylum seeking to only ports of entry. It has the ability for Biden to, or any president to basically quote unquote shut down the border. And the reason I say quote unquote is because what that actually means is that anybody that tries to cross at an illegal point of entry would instantly be turned back, no questions asked. If they can sometimes be put in jail depending on the situation for that. Also, but the legal points of entry would still remain open because we're under treaties for the asylum claims. So that's why you can't just shut down the border entirely and prevent all asylum seeking. Congress would have to pass laws and actually get around treaties that we have signed to make it legal. Whether or not the treaty would be enforced by the UN or somebody like that, that's another question entirely. Probably not, but that's currently what the law states. From a Republican standpoint, the bill wasn't as strong because it allows for a few things. So it still allows for the parole program to continue, but it does put caps on it, from what I understand, as well as it doesn't mandate that you put people in jail. Those are the two biggest differences from the Republican standpoint from the two bills. As I've already said, you're not going to jail your way out of this situation. You need comprehensive immigration reform. Some of the stuff that's inside the Senate bill goes towards part of that. Some of the stuff but a lot of stuff was left out because this was essentially a knee-jerk reaction to the increase in numbers getting into the border between I want to say August of last year to about present, roughly about present, shortly after Title 42 was finally rescinded. And so that's why you have these two bills coming up. And it was a losing issue for Biden. It was a losing issue for Democrats. A lot of people, including liberals wanted to see more done at the border, as Republicans did the shady but great political move on their end. Not that it's moral. Anybody in chat, I'm not saying this was the right thing to do, but what they did politically, and they sent these immigrants to cities that couldn't handle them, and they couldn't handle them for very specific reasons that we can get into later. Talked about it on my show with Nate Dallin, just posted it yesterday. But so that's why they went in about this. For me personally, HB2 is mostly a PR bill, and it's mostly a PR bill because, again, you're not going to jail your way out of this. And a lot of the stuff that is in HB2 is about putting people into prison. It's about keeping families together in prison. Mm-hmm. It's about denying people's ability to have asylum by making it much stricter. It's by doing all these other things. It's just not going to work. Just full stop. It's not going to work. So that's why it's a PR bill to me.
Okay, and Tyler?
Just to add, because I agree with about 95% of what he just said there. Just to add a few more points, I went with a couple Republicans I see as serious people. Not everybody's going to agree, but I went and checked out some of their criticisms about this. The bill grants the DHS the right to bypass immigration courts and just flat out grant asylum to X amount of people. The bill codifies catch and release into actual law. It was an Obama DHS policy, catch and release. It codifies it into law, meaning that every administration has to follow it and work around it. The bill, and then everything else, I think the parole abuse you mentioned. Yeah, everything else you mentioned. So this is just the two things I would say. Oh, and Tom Cotton was bitching about how it gives money to Gaza for humanitarian aid, which it's a border bill. But whatever. It was supposed to be a border bill plus immigration, or plus Israel plus so I mean I feel like that fits. Tom Cotton can shut up. So the alternative, HR2, I really feel like encapsulates a lot of the things I hear Republicans talk about here. Yes, it is about jailing people. They don't want to separate families anymore, but because of the Flores settlement in 1997, you cannot put a child in prison in the United States, even if they're not a citizen. So they're going to build or have other facilities that aren't technically prisons, the cages or whatever, but they're going to keep families together in them so they don't have to waste time in DNA. It also, a lot of this is about DNA testing. The TSA is forced a DNA test. The DHS is forced a DNA test. We're taking all these people, we're getting them on a record. Oops, sorry.
Just to piggyback off of that really quick, this is not just DNA testing, but to keep records, like you're saying there. This is biometric surveillance at a level we have never seen before. We're talking collecting every single person's biometric data, DNA, iris scans, all the stuff that we did in Iraq and Afghanistan in order to keep soldiers safe, quote unquote, is going to be put on the border. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out.
That being said, a lot of it, though, is the prerequisite, because about half the bill is codifying E-Verify into law, which is the Republicans' baby policy for how to fix the border in terms with having workers come over and overstaying visas. Yeah, you're right. It does a lot to raise penalties. It raises penalties for crossing the border illegally. It raises penalties for overstaying your visa. It raises all sorts of penalties and puts jail time and blah, blah, blah on them. You are 100% correct about that. It is a bit authoritarian. It talks about how, I think it's 18 ICE facilities Biden either closed down or downsized since he took office. All of those have to be refunded. It's in the bill. They are forced to build a total of 900 miles of wall from the bill, which we already have 700 wall or fencing. So it'd be replacing all that wall or fencing that Trump already started and then adding 200 more. So it would be about half of the actual physical border. So they're kind of it looks like it's kind of a compromise. And again, John Fetterman said he sides with a lot of this stuff in here. So it's really, I'd say the majority of the bill.
Well, I'm pretty sure, to be clear, unless something's changed, I'm pretty sure Fetterman said that he would consider voting for HR2 in exchange for Republicans getting their shit together on foreign policy. I don't think it's because Fetterman just read the bill and was like, hell yeah, I love this thing.
He said he agreed with some of the things.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure he agreed with some of it. I just don't want this to be characterized as a full-throated endorsement of the bill, when in reality, he's just saying, listen, Republicans, I'll give you this, but you better give me foreign aid for Israel. It's this for that. So
I just had one other thing I wanted to say about HR2 before we move past it
sure.
real quick. So the DHS right now, they have policies that give them authority but don't mandate them to enforce it. So like if somebody's here illegally and the DHS picks them up for whatever reason, they have the authority to deport that person, but they're not mandated to. This bill would turn that into a mandate. So it would make it so they have to deport if they find an illegal immigrant under any circumstances.
So my question is this. Well, first, I guess what? So you prefer this HR2, right? You prefer HR2 to the
M- Me
bipartisan border bill?
personally, I'd like to see kind of a mix of both. I want to see DHS power limited, but I don't want more jail time for people. And like, I think we should be a
Sure.
little nicer on kids.
To be
I don't
clear,
know. I
well,
lean toward, yeah, you're right. I probably lean a little more toward HR2,
okay.
but I
And
like
you,
parts of
Cipher,
both.
if you had to choose between the two, and you can give your
If
full thoughts on it, but
Yeah, if I had to choose between the two, it would definitely be the Senate bill. Simply because I cannot sit here, I cannot stand by while we create what would amount to almost concentration camps, because they want all these built on the southern border. They want thousands of people to be in there, and they want them to stay there until their hearings are actually heard. So that's indefinite detention. There's no release whatsoever until their hearings heard, and that could be any time. We have backlogs of 5 years now, 5+ years. So there's been people that have been waiting on their asylum hearing from 8 years ago, like that Nate Dallin, my good friend Nate Dallin has as a client, that they're still waiting on a hearing to do. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. Is there money in there for processing for judges in HR2?
No.
Yeah.
Their strategy.
So
is
that's just going to
deterrence.
keep. It's just going to the same problem's going to be there. And so
But they have things in there to cut down on asylum fraud so that the wait line isn't nearly as long. So
some of that stuff is going to be adjudicated in the court. I think some of that would get overturned.
yeah, because in order to determine a thing is fraud, you have to investigate in the first place, which requires resources, right? So here's my question, just to kind of summarize, move the conversation along. So you both elucidated substantive differences between the two bills. They're clearly not identical. And neither of you are particularly happy about either bill. As a matter of fact, Cipher, that you say you prefer the Senate bill, but it's still mostly a PR issue that won't actually get to the heart of the matter. Go ahead.
So just for clarity, I think the Senate bill will help with the current crisis. It doesn't help with immigration in general.
Fair.
So the current crisis is there's too many people showing up at the border. The Senate bill will help alleviate the processing problems that we're seeing there, and it will also get some people into the country a little quicker. So it helps with that to into or out of the country, whatever the case may be for the individual person, and quicker, which would help with that. But it doesn't fix immigration.
So my question is, and then Tyler's position was, neither are ideal for him, but he would prefer the House bill. But the crux of this disagreement was over doing something. You clearly both agree that both in the short term and the long term, something needs to be done to address this issue. So we don't have any of that right now. So there is no Senate bill because Republicans are not going to pass it. Tyler, there is no House bill because Democrats are not going to pass it. And so again, I'm not trying to like unfairly tip the scales, but I'm still trying to figure out what the disagreement is, because it didn't seem like it was just an academic disagreement over specific points of the policy. It sounded like, Tyler, you took issue with the idea of Republicans passing the Senate bill in the first place. And actually, Cipher, did you want? I'm curious. you voiced your preference, but are you unhappy with how things turned out with respect to the Senate bill? Like, do you think it would have been better than nothing for Democrats and Republicans to pass it into law?
No, I think that the current crisis will eventually ebb on its own. I do believe that there's some positive things in the Senate bill. So if we're going to get something, then yeah, let's do it. Especially because I want aid to Ukraine. Not so much Israel anymore, or ever, but we do need to keep our allies allies. So we do need to have leverage there. But absent that or HB2, like I'd rather have nothing. If it's HB2 or nothing, I'd rather have nothing.
And if it's I can't remember what the Senate bill was, the Langford bill. If it's the Langford bill or nothing, what do you prefer?
I would take the Langford bill, knowing that is the lesser of two evils, because nothing is still bad, primarily due to Ukraine and some of the issues that are at the border.
And Tyler, what about you? Would you prefer? Obviously, it sounds like you'd prefer the House bill to nothing. But what about the Senate bill to nothing?
Yeah. The only thing I don't like about it is that it codifies catch and release into law, but like, so what? You can just pass another bill and revert that if you don't like it as a Republican. Otherwise, yeah, I think both would be my personal suggestion. Looks a lot different than both of them. I think both of them are improvements to help the situation in the short, and I do think that in the long term, the Senate bill would actually be a little nicer than Cipher is giving it credit for. It does help some things in the long term, but I think both of them would be an improvement, and I think both of them would help in their own ways. I just think that Republicans and Democrats are kind of seeing a different problem here, and the problem Republicans are seeing is these people that are coming in legally. A lot of them are coming in with the visa programs and whatnot. It's too much, too many. The asylum abuse as well. That's kind of why I wanted to break this down into the three different types of migrants, because like we're the catch and we got the people over here that got away. The gotaways, we don't care about them. We're talking right now about the biggest problem with New York and all these other cities are the people that are applying for asylum retroactively. So in 2000, a study done from 1996 to 2010, only 5% of aliens apprehended at the border claimed asylum for fear of prosecution. Fear of prosecution is a slightly lower standard for asylum than others. 95% of people didn't make this claim and got returned to their home countries. And that was how it was. In 2010, Obama passed a policy. And I'm not trying to put this all on Obama. He probably did it for a good reason. It might have this is an unintended consequence more than likely, but he enhanced the credible fear claim and allowed those people to be paroled into the United States interior and get a work permit, which again, you could say that's good. But if you allow these work permits, which the Republican bill is trying to take them away, if you allow these work permits, it's going to incentivize fraud. So we saw after Obama changed that ruling, it went from 5% of people to 39% of people in 4 years applying for asylum that particular way. And of those people, 81% of them get in. Where we saw before the laws changed, it was only 15%.
So
So
I think this requires a little bit of. Oh, sorry, you're not done.
No, I was just gonna say I was just gonna sum it up with that's potentially 2 million people here abusing the fraud, the asylum system just based on these numbers and doing a little bit quick math. 2 million people here abusing the asylum system potentially illegally and being allowed in for the backlog, which I saw. You said 5. I saw it was 7 years. So I don't know.
I'm sorry, I just didn't catch you. Could you
the backlog?
5-7 years? What?
Okay, the asylum backlog. I saw it was 7 years. So like
it's in that range. There's, like I said, somebody was 8 years. My friend had as a client. So
the Republican strategy is to say that if you're applying for asylum, we're going to try to speed up your trial by cutting down on the fraud. And the way we're going to do that is not allow a work privilege incentive while you're here on your asylum trial. And that way people coming here to abuse the asylum system to make money and send it back to their home country lose that ability. And that is what's going to speed up the asylum system. Because that's how it was before 2010.
So I think there should be some elucidation on this. So there's 5 categories for asylum. The 4 that everybody knows: race, religion, ethnicity, political persecution, right? And then there's a 5th catch-all. I don't remember what the 5th catch-all is, but it's basically of a special group, right? The reason why Obama expanded of the special group is because of the narco states that were starting to creep up around Latin America, where there was credible fear for their lives of these people that ran afoul of the narco terrorist. So that was expanded, and it was prior to 2010. Those kind of cases were adjudicated mostly positively for immigrants as well. There's been, it ebbs and flows, right? But, during Reagan and the 90s, there was a bit more that was allowed in from that. After the 90s, with another push for anti-immigration, there was a bit less. And it kind of ebbs and flows based on the judges that are appointed, the kind of people that join DHS, or at the time, immigration enforcement, whoever's adjudicating the case. So because of that, I think these people actually, there's a lot of them that aren't abusing the asylum system when they claim that, because they are actually under duress from a gang or somebody else. And this can be anything, right? You could be a woman that's like, hey, you're going to be my girlfriend. No, I'm not. Okay, then I'm going to kill your whole family, or else you're not going to be my girlfriend. It could be the other way. It could be like your brother kicked, your brother like didn't do the job that we told him to do. Now we're going to kidnap you and hold you for ransom until he does the job we tell him to do. Like, it could be any number of these different things. And that has increased since 2010 in Latin American countries. So that's one problem. I think the other thing.
To summarize, Cypher, real quick, what you're saying is simply because the numbers and the rate of increase, it's not necessarily due to fraud.
I would. There's definitely some fraud, but I would say that it's not all. It's definitely not all. I would say right. It's mostly.
To be clear, yeah, I wasn't trying to imply that you said that you're.
I'm just
fraud. Yeah. But okay, fair enough. So a couple of things for chat here. Well, first off, Tyler, do you want to briefly respond, and then I told chat if they have any questions or comments for either of you, they can post them and we can.
That's actually no. It was just interesting because I didn't know why Obama passed this, and as I was saying, I don't want to hate on Obama here. This is probably the unintended consequence of something that's good, and what you're telling me is good. I completely agree with this, but this is an unintended consequence, is the asylum abuse that rises from it. So I just wanted to follow up. 81% of people that apply for asylum now. That apply for asylum in this way get into the U.S. interior. Of those people, 40% never show up for a court date. And of the ones that show up for a court date, that other 60%, only 15% of them actually get granted asylum based on these conditions. So estimated 85% to 90% of these people using this end up getting turned down by the courts in the long run. So I would say it's a lot of fraud.
Another reason.
I was going to say real quick, I've seen some statistics, because I've talked about this on my video, the Cato Institute presented this, that the number of people who return to their asylum cases is upwards of 80%. And according to the Cato Institute, those very often who don't show up for their asylum court cases are because they're also sent so far into the interior out of the range of their jurisdiction.
That may be correct. This is just this particular type of asylum that only 60% showed up.
And we have to acknowledge that this is the reason I kind of cringed a little bit. We have to acknowledge that Trump had appointed a lot of judges, and a lot of judges that have his ideological bent when it comes to immigration. So a lot more judges are denying asylum cases, even if the facts would say prior to all the judges being appointed, they would have been granted. They're starting to do that more. And the one other thing is that the so the data about who will be granted an asylum and who will not be is so noisy that you could have two similar situations, almost the exact same situation, before two different judges. One judge will rule favorably over the asylum seeker, and the other one will rule against it. And you can't actually tell the difference because it's such a personal one-to-one thing with the judge, the person's representative, and how they approach their own case. So that's another problem with it as well.
So a couple of things here. We're going to turn to chat. So RW says, average debate supporter in the House. So there you go, buddy. Let's see here. What to see? Lost Highway said, I'm not sure how that's considered a signal for fraud by just eliminating the ability to work while they wait and seeing fewer people do it. Does anyone want to address that? This idea that it's not necessarily fraud if you eliminate the ability of people to work while they claim asylum or while they're waiting for their asylum claims to be adjudicated.
I'll let Average go first.
Yeah, I'll address that. Also, Old Scotty in the chat, I have a Word document that's 7 pages long where I have all my citations listed. I'll post it for you if you'd like after the debate. That being said, the reason why not letting these people work while they're awaiting their trial it would disincentivize the fraud is because the main reason people are abusing the system is so they could come over here and work during that potentially 5 to 7 year period, collect as much US money as they can, and then go back to their own country where that money is worth substantially more than if they worked that 5 to 7 years there. They're basically moving their family up a level of income just by coming here and working for half a decade. And that would cut down on it substantially.
Yeah, I don't think that it would cut back on fraud. I think it might try to cut back on all cases. That's kind of what the Republicans are actually trying to do, in my opinion, with HB2. And the reason I say that is because they're increasing detention, they're increasing family detention, they're making it to where you have mandatory imprisonment essentially. And so if your motivation is to get here to seek asylum, you're going to risk it, because even being in the American prison, even a detention center, maybe your kids get to go to school while you're waiting. It's still better than waiting in your home country and potentially get killed or not have any economic opportunity whatsoever, because the risk to reward ratio is still skewed towards coming to the United States, even if you have to sit in prison, because at the end of the day, you're still alive. Your kid's getting an education. They're getting fed.
Yeah, so that's why, again, I'm kind of confused by, because to Lost Highway's point, he's like, concept of fraud is useless because you have to investigate every case to determine whether or not fraud exists, which was my point earlier. Like, the only way you can determine that an asylum case is fraudulent is when you actually look into it, right? And so when I hear you all talk about this, my thought process is, okay, if you remove the ability of asylum seekers to work in the United States, you will probably trim down on a portion. I don't know what the statistics would be. You would probably trim down on a portion of asylum claims. But to Lost Highway's point, I don't think that that's necessarily indicative of fraud. It could just be that a person's like, damn, if my choice is making a perilous journey to the United States, yes, because I legitimately need asylum, but I can't do anything while I'm there. So the choice is potentially starving to death in the United States after a perilous journey, or putting up with a serious dangers here. It may have a chilling effect on cases that might not be fraudulent. So that's where I'm.
They
What
wouldn't
do you
starve
think
to
about that,
death.
Tyler?
They wouldn't starve. We would be putting them. So this would work how it did prior to Obama's expansion in 2010. We would be facilitating them. We would be feeding them, and it would be technically what he's saying as a prison, but it wouldn't be like you're behind bars in a fucking cage. Like, they could expand these out. They could even make like cheap public housing in certain
But why
areas and
would they?
whatnot.
They don't want to give these people like even opportunity for a job. So there's no reason to believe that it would be like a
Well,
mini city.
we already have again though, since Biden's taken office, he's closed down or downsized 18 ICE facilities that were meant
Yeah.
for holding. So if they open those back up, maybe they could do a little bit of reconstruction, make them a little more humane if Democrats work with them to
But
make them that way.
are they really going to do that? I don't have any reason to believe a Republican would want any of that, to be
If
honest
it gets
with
some 20 Democrat votes, maybe they
you.
would.
Nah, I don't think so. I'm just being honest. I really don't.
I-
Go ahead.
no, you're good.
Okay. One thing that I forgot to mention, and this is important as well, another thing that the Republicans with HB2 are trying to actually reduce asylum seeking in general, is that they're going to automatically deny anybody's asylum claim if they cross into the border without proving the ability to prove that they applied for asylum in a safe third country, and they're going to expand the number of countries that are considered safe third countries. So you go to a country, you apply for asylum in the safe third country. It might not be safe, whatever. And they deny you, or you have to wait 3 years and then they deny you. That's what they want to do. They want just less people coming to the U.S.
I forgot about that. That isn't here. That's something else that kind of addresses your point, Josiah. They don't have to make the dangerous trek because there's other countries along the way that wouldn't have that person in there saying, "I'm going to kill your family if you don't do what I tell you."
Supposedly.
Yeah. But there's a couple good. El Salvador, their murder rate right now is lower than some cities in the U.S.
El Salvador is also actively engaged in a war with gangs, and the gangs have almost taken over the city, one of the major cities last time I looked. So I wouldn't say that El Salvador is a safe third country.
Well, Venezuela is doing things right now to clean up the streets too.
So
they're not all hellholes.
So, well, I don't think anybody thinks that they're hellholes, but okay, so there would be provisions um, for asylum seekers to, while their asylum cases are being adjudicated, to remain in other countries, which we actually have right now under President Biden as well, that he, negotiated various Latin America, South American countries to take in asylum seekers while their cases are being adjudicated. So that's the case here as well. Um, you said that Biden, I was trying to find this in real time, that Biden shut down 18, you said detention facilities?
18, not shut down. He shut down or downsized. I can't find the exact verbiage on them because they say, like, I got an article that says not in late 2023 it was 9 facilities he tried to shut down. It's from the Economic Times. I can send you the citation if you need.
Yeah, if you
One of
don't
them's
mind, if
yeah,
you could send that to me right now while you all are talking so I can look
I'll
at
send
it.
all 3 to you that I grabbed. One of them was from 2001 where they talk about, I think, 2. One of them was from 2003 where they talk about 4. One of them was from 2023 where they talk about 9. Discord fun.
Yeah, let's see here. So while I'm looking at that, Lost Highway, or excuse me, Lataviant, Matt says, what is the asylum abuse here that exists because of the Obama expansion?
I think we kind of already explained that. Is so. Let me go back to that paragraph that I already greened out. So in 1996 to 2010, a study was done that only 5% of people apprehended at the border who were claiming asylum did so of a fear of prosecution. Um, in 2010, Obama, for a good reason, expanded that policy, which allowed people also, by expanding that policy, also allowed them to be paroled into the US interior while they awaited trial and get work permits, which sounds good. They're paying their own way, government doesn't have to pay for it. But as a result of that, that number went from 5% of people to 39% of people applying for asylum within 4 years that particular way. So a steady 5% for 15 years, law changes. 4 years later, it's 8 times bigger than it was, and we started seeing our asylum systems getting slightly flooded, and it just exponentially got worse. Now, of the people that make that claim, 81% of them that make the credible fear claim get released into the US interior. Only 15% of people that show up for court actually get approved for that claim. So hypothetically, 85% of people that show up for court did not fit that criteria, but still got to come into the interior of the United States. That's the
Okay.
fraud.
Well, again, I think you're overstating that is potential
Yeah, but yeah,
fraud there. Yeah.
yes, yes.
So out of curiosity, while you were answering, I had a chance to look at the detention facilities claim. Before I respond, can you can you can you reiterate what your point is with respect to the downsizing or the shuttering of these facilities? Because I don't want to misunderstand you.
Me? I'm
You,
sorry.
Tyler.
I miss
Yeah.
I miss what
No,
Oh,
no. So
I
yeah.
was
So
just
with
looking through the citations for a number and I kind of added one up out of there. I think it was 18. I was just looking for how many facilities that he shut down a year. So in 2021 I found 2, 2022 I found 4, and then 2023 I found 9. So, and I think I had another citation I was looking at. I don't know. Maybe it's 15. I don't remember exactly.
So, but can you reiterate what your point is with regards to that? Like, what does it
Oh.
mean that he shut those down? What are
Oh,
you?
those would be potential places for people to stay. And let's say hypothetically Democrats adopted HR2 and wanted to do some amendments to it, they could make them a little more humane since a family was going to be staying in there. HR2 ends family separation at the border. If you are biologically the child or the parent of that child, you stay with that child through the entire processing uh, through the system. And then if you get deported with that child too. So that's kind of what the HR2 is trying to end, was kids in
So,
cages
what your
alone.
point was that there was real estate in theory to at least begin to accommodate
Yeah.
these people if they were sufficiently resourced and regulated and staffed, et cetera, and so
Mhm.
forth.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, my question, I suppose, with regards to this, it just keeps coming back to, if you two agree that something is better than nothing, how can you support the decision to not pass any legislation? Like, my understanding was based on the Twitter exchange, for example. I had it up. Um, was this seemed to be the key disagreement here, besides like the particulars on policy. So Cypher says Congress needs to change the law. And you said, and Tyler says, I don't know, man, you seem to be coming from the premise of your solution is the only way and zero compromise with anything else. Cypher says the other solutions aren't compromised with Democrats. And you said, well, I agree, but Democrats are down -33 on handling of the border and need the GOP, so they don't get to pick the policy they want first. So what? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, are you saying that you disagree in substance with what the Republicans did? You just think it was a fine political move, or do you think I'm confused?
It's good. Okay, so I think if I go into my argument here, because I got notes for it,
Sure.
it's Biden changing Trump's DHS policy. So when Republicans say that Biden could fix all this tomorrow without passing any new laws or any new funding, this is what I usually will hear them boil down to, not executive orders. So what they're saying is, and we got Mayorkas, excuse me, I'm sorry, we got Mayorkas on record saying that the Trump administration's version of border policy was antithetical to the one that the Obama administration had put in. He basically said that they had to start from scratch and completely gut all of Trump's border DHS policy in late February 2021. And then going into the number of border. Yeah, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Sorry, my notes are a little scrambled up. And there was another instance where Mayorkas and the Biden administration were bragging about removing the migrant protections protocol, which is essentially the real name for stay in Mexico. And what you were saying with stay in Mexico earlier, Mexico said they wouldn't comply with it, but when Trump was in office, they did. And right now, Mexico is also saying they won't comply with Biden's border agenda unless he gives them $20 billion. And I think it was like 10 million visas over X amount of years.
Yeah. So the reason why I say that the Remain in Mexico policy is bad, and one of the things that is it's an issue, and why that AMLO won't do it, is because it created a humanitarian crisis at the other side of the border because of the amount of backlog that was happening. People weren't trying to cross the border because they're like, oh, I'm in line now. Maybe I'll get heard my case in 6 months. Comes a year later, they're like, well, fuck this. I'm sitting here waiting. I'm in squalor. I'm in these temporary camps. The Mexican government's not letting me work. I can't work. I can't do anything. Like, so I'm just going to take my chances and cross, even though that could potentially make my asylum claim null and void. That's why I would say that AMLO wouldn't do it. And then his counter that you brought up, and I hadn't heard about until you brought it up a few days ago, was that the 20 billion and the 10 million visas is because that would help alleviate some of the problems that are happening there. They would get money to fund his side of it, and then he would get 10 million people that he could get into the United States, which would free up jobs to give to other people. So it's not really a compromise, and that's not something that Republicans are going to support anyways. So I don't really see how this is like a like, oh, he's going to do it. No, this is him being like, if you really want this, I got a solution for you. No one's going to take it. He's not stupid.
It is pretty high demand, and it does feel, I'm not accusing him of a crime, but it feels a little extortiony. If your country doesn't pay me $20 billion for my country, we're going to let all these people just walk right through. We're not going to protect our borders, so that you got to protect yours harder. It rings a little bit of extortion.
I mean, we've been doing the same thing to Mexico as well. I mean, that's where everybody's going to use their leverage to do the best they can for their country. So.
And we could do that. That's what I'm saying. We could do that back. And Trump did. He did get Mexico to comply.
Yeah,
stay in Mexico.
I don't know what he gave Mexico for that. To be honest with you, I don't know. It wasn't widely reported on it, so I don't know. I just know that the result of that was not humane, and that's why I'm against it. It's not tenable, and it's been proven to not be tenable with all the issues that were happening just south of the border. Like, you could see the camp cities being erected, you could see the shanty towns that are being erected, you could see the crime increasing just over the border because of the amount of people that weren't able to do much. And then Mexico's got its own problems. So I mean, every country's got its own problems, but Mexico's got some more than we do. So we have to acknowledge that too.
Fetterman's been my favorite senator for a couple of months now, especially since he kind of stood up to the extremists on Israel. The fact that he would work with this at the very least and take it to the next step in negotiations, to me, it shows it does have some potential to strike some people on the other side. Maybe you could put funding for border judges into HR2. It doesn't re-implement stay in Mexico. It tries to fix the Obama loophole. And so it would
Oh, does
kind of
it?
be no, it
I
doesn't
think it,
re-implement.
I think it does actually. Let me double check that really quick.
I'm looking through my notes. I didn't see it. I could have missed it. It's in legal jargon. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on that shit. We're reading the Supreme Court rulings about Texas and the other one. I don't know half the like. It's hard to read. I have a hard time concentrating
So
on it.
let's see. Oscar wants to know, having enough judicial infrastructure at the border to handle demand and adjudicate migrants at the border with small wait times, why is that not the solution?
It could
Good
very
question.
well be, and I think that's missing from the Republican because even if the Republicans implement HR2, it's still not going to fix the problem we have right now of the 5 to 7 year waiting period. I think we need to dump some temporary money into that to get that waiting list cleared up first, and then we can implement it. So yes, absolutely agree. The Republican plan is missing that.
So I don't know what the genesis was in terms of what Biden or what Trump did or did not give Mexico. It's entirely possible at the time Mexico was fine with it. Then, as they saw that it generated issues on their side, that's when they were like, listen, we're not going to support this any longer. So it may not be that Trump ever gave Mexico anything to implement the Remain in Mexico policy. It could be just as an act of good faith, the Mexican government cooperated with Trump, then considered the policy a disaster after its implementation. And then when Biden rescinded it, they were like, hey, just so you know, we tried this crap under Trump. We didn't like it. We're not going to do it with you. So that may very well be the case. There may not have been any real concession from the Trump administration, which may be why it wasn't reported, because I don't know what it is offhand, if there was any to begin with. But uh, this thing here, it kind of comic gets to the heart of it. Clearly, Trump will not let Johnson bring any bill to the House floor without his boss's approval. So HR2 passed the House. I'm not sure even if Democrats wanted to pass it, that they would get enough Republican votes to pass it too. Because if what you say is true, Tyler, and if what Republicans say is true, that it would solve the issue at the border, doesn't that run contrary to what Donald Trump says he wants, which is
Yeah,
to run on the issue?
yeah, and I think that there's probably. I mean, when has fact ever stood in Donald Trump's way of saying anything?
Right. Right. So what I mean is, like, even if you could get Democrat support for it, which you won't, it's entirely possible that if the Senate took up HR2, even a call, because what'd be fascinating is, I'm not saying that they should do it because I'm sure there could be political consequences, but maybe Biden's kicked around. You know what? Tell Schumer to bring this to the floor. Let's just see what happens. Because worst case scenario, Biden could always veto it, and just call their bluff. Be like, okay, you guys continue to move the goalposts. You say, listen, you want a border bill. We give you a relatively conservative bipartisan border bill. You say, no, that's not going to cut it. Okay, we'll take your bill up and see if Republicans vote in line with it or not. I suspect that you'd have many would oppose that bill too, because again, it would, in at least in theory, deprive Donald Trump of a wedge issue ahead of the election, which is right now the overriding issue. So that might be that might be interesting. I'm not saying that they should do that because again, there could backfire on the president, but the fact that we're still left with nothing is kind of what I keep coming back to. And if something's better than nothing, and then why don't you go for the thing that's attainable? HR2 was not possible at any point in the timeline because no Democrat was going to oppose it, not for political reasons. Because as you say, right now they're underwater on immigration, right? So
33 points.
they're taking a hit by not passing any sort of legislation. So right or wrong, their objections to HR2 are for principle, even if you think they're dead wrong on it. It's not for shameless, cynical politics. It's because they genuinely object to the provisions of the bill. We can't say that for the bipartisan Senate bill, or at least we have plenty of evidence to the contrary that actually Republicans were interested in it until Trump voiced objection to it. So I don't understand where you fall on it, because to me, at the end of the day, substantively, the reason that we don't have a border bill is because of Republicans, not Democrats. Now, you can say, well, politically, it's a bigger issue for Republicans or a bigger problem for Democrats right now, which is true, except there's been recent polling conducted by Third Way. Chris Murphy was talking about this, that when respondents are explained what happened with the border bill, that 15-point advantage flips, or it's negated. So Biden's banking on, well, in the next 9 months or 8 months, I can use the bully pulpit to tell the American people that actually Republicans are rat fucking me on this issue. And as a matter of fact, the threat of that is so severe. I don't know if you saw this. I did a video about it. The Republicans are wanting to cancel Biden's State of the Union because they're afraid he's going to bring it up during the State of the Union, which he should. He should make the entire State of the Union about how the Republicans suck and rat fucked him on this. So what I guess my question is, like, when it came to this part here, the disagreement with you and Cypher. So are you suggesting that Democrats capitulate to Republicans on this?
So when I'm looking at that right now, I thought a little more about this, and I actually disagree now. I think that if the Democrats don't pass anything on the border, if they can actually use that bully pulpit and that massive, potentially $2 billion war chest that Biden is on track right now to get, if they could use that to convince the people that this is partially the Republicans' fault, the upside is all these people are still coming in under Biden's visa program, and they're working, which is making his economy better. And that's the actual issue people vote on. If you look at voting trends, the only people that vote on the border are right wingers. It's like a massive deal to right wingers and to like independents, Hispanic voters, white voters that aren't Republican. It's like such a low ball thing. Nobody votes on it. People vote on the economy, jobs, inflation, things like that. And if we continue on the path we're on, the amount of migrants coming in is actually going to make the economy better. So thinking into that a little bit harder, I think that Biden's best bet is to not let anything pass. But at the same time, it does give the GOP something to argue about. But remember 2018, Trump's centerpiece for his for the midterms was the caravans, was immigration, and he lost. He got clobbered in those midterms in 2018.
BTFO'd.
Yeah, people outside the Republican Party do not care about immigration that much, and I feel like Biden's actually playing some pretty smart politics by pretending he wants this passed, but giving them something that codifies things in the law that they are fundamentally against. Catch and release is being one of them.
I think there's a, I'm not going to quibble too much about it. I think the reason that Biden switched on this, though, is because moderate Democrats and suburban Democrats kind of switched on it due to the Republicans. Again, not moral, but it's a good political move when they started busing people to liberal cities. And they chose liberal cities with good policies to drain them of their resources and make it worse for them in order to show that, this is a serious issue. And I think that's primarily why he switched. Now that, Republicans are like, no, we can't pass anything because you can just shut down the border on your own. You don't need us. Now that's going to make those people switch back. They're like, wait a second. We were saying that the border was an issue. We were willing to give you all this stuff on the border. And now you're saying that you don't want it because Trump said not. No, they're not going to play that game. The Democrats are going to win so much on this issue in the suburbs. It's not even going to be funny. It's not even going to be funny.
You're right. But like, there's a lot of, we jumped into something I got notes for here. So if we look at New York City, Greg Abbott isn't even responsible for 20% of the immigrants in New York City. When we're looking at that, it is asylees that could be potentially abusing the system, but we're also looking at a lot of people that got visas through these other programs, through the program. 600,000 people came in through the Biden administration without a notice to appear.
But if they got visas, though, then they have a work permit. So are they supposed to have a work permit? And so those people are working. Those are not the people that are draining the resources.
Yeah.
The people that are draining the resources that are being put up in hotels and other places, because New York passed the right to housing legislation in 2022, I think is when it was passed. Those people are the ones that are primarily being bussed into the state by other states.
In a way, they're one and the same. A lot of those people that have those work permits are coming in. They don't have somewhere to stay lined up for them. They're going into those hotels.
Those people are temporary. Yeah, those people are
60 to 90
temporarily
days,
doing
yep.
that. But the people that are quote unquote draining the city of the resources that are the major problem, or the people that hadn't gotten a work visa yet, had been bussed there by the other states.
Well,
that's my read on it.
So I remember with that, when they went after, I think it was either DeSantis or Greg Abbott on this, we found out that they are not allowed to coax the migrants into what city they want to go to. All they can do is say, we don't want you here. Where do you want to go? And the migrants pick the city based on what they're told is the best situation for them.
Yeah, but if you read, like with the DeSantis one, they were essentially lied to. They had like the real stuff in English, and then they had like prettified version that there's going to be jobs waiting for you, kind of like with the Martha's Vineyard thing specifically. They had it two different ones. You could look at the translated version versus the English version. The English version was more robust. They were trying to get away with doing stuff like that. There are some issues where there are some with Greg Abbott where they're being like, where do you want to go? And they're being told, well, I got family in this place or whatever, and then they're being sent there. But they're primarily being like coaxed, or not coaxed, we'll say convinced under dubious pretenses to go to certain cities. And that's where you get Chicago, DC, dropping them off in front of Kamala Harris's house in Virginia.
No, I don't want to
like,
I don't want to go all
Observatory.
conspiracy theory. Like, I don't want to sound like somebody far right talking about George Soros and all his NGOs trying to destroy the West. But there are educational programs done by NGOs to teach them how to apply for asylum, what to say when they come up here, what states offer the best policies. Like sanctuary cities just on their own, if every state gave the same amount of money, sanctuary cities alone would be enough to tell migrants, this is where you want to go. Because if you fuck up in Alabama, you're gone. You fuck up in California, they're going to just treat you like a citizen. So like, I would say a lot of these people are going to these places because there's better incentives too.
It's a little bit of both. I'm not going to say it's not a little bit of both, but I'm saying that the dubious stuff is happening, and I think that you might be discounting it more than I am. And I think that should be done. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So now that we've, I guess, agreed that it sounds like there's not nearly as harsh of a disagreement as there was originally.
Hey, text debates.
I thought we got along just fine. There was no insults. There was no swearing.
No, sure. Well, so somebody in chat says, thank you, Josiah, for asking my question. You guys clearly want to talk about policy, but any policy is moot to stop illegal immigration if it can't be adjudicated in a timely manner at the border. If migrants knew they would be adjudicated at the border, they would not come in such numbers because they could not abuse the system to get into the interior of the U.S. Please mention what I said to them in response. Thank you.
I think both policies agree with that and just come to it a different way.
So that's basically all I had about the border. If you guys want to like finish up with if you have any final comments on that, and then I'll probably be done here in like 20 minutes. There's other politics things while I have you here that we can talk about if you want. Sure. But if either of you want to give your final comments on the border legislation, the politicization of the border, either of you have anything you want to say?
I got like 3 more points we just didn't get to. I could just power around through real quick. 2023 was the highest year for border funding in U.S. history. It was 30% more than the average Donald Trump got for all 4 of his years. And that's with all the ICE facilities getting shut down too. The amount of people being released into the interior, this is just an estimate, between Trump and Biden is 1 to 30, and Biden administration admits to flying in
1 to 30 what? That
people released into the interior. And again, it's a lot because there's more people coming. So like it sounds worse than it is. Yeah.
Oh, you're saying for every one person Trump let in, Biden's letting in 30? Is that what you meant? The ratio?
Yes,
okay. I just didn't understand.
And on its own, this is the power round. I left out all the nuance, but it's not as bad as it sounds. The Biden administration admits to flying in 300,000 people that didn't applied for his visa program in their country. They just told him he didn't want it to look bad on the border, so he told him just to wait in their country and chartered them planes to the United States, which just costs a bunch of money. But again, long-term economic payoff, if it stays the way it is, it's going to reflect on Biden's economy better than if we fix the border tomorrow. So that's all I got.
Okay, Cypher.
Yeah, I guess some final thoughts. We have had issues with immigration since Reagan, as far as needing comprehensive immigration reform. We have not gotten comprehensive immigration reform, and I blame the predominantly on just people that don't want immigration in general. When you talk to a lot of people about immigration, not people like Tyler, but some of the more radical people, some of the more right wing Republicans, you're gonna ask them how many people do you want in the country? Like if these people have a legitimate asylum claim that they have a legitimate asylum claim should be let in, you're going to get a lot of no, they shouldn't. It's not our problem. And that is primarily why we don't have a comprehensive immigration reform, because we almost got it in 2012, or we almost got it in 2006. We almost got it in 2012 or 2013. Don't remember the exact year. Republicans torpedoed both of those. And Marco Rubio, that's when I lost all respect for Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio was my favorite Republican until that moment when he kowtowed to the extreme right wing on that. And until that fraction of the Republican Party doesn't have as much power as it currently does, we're not going to get the thing that we actually need. So we're going to end up having to rely on executive orders, executive action in order to get a nuanced policy with the border. And we're going to have this issue going forward. So if you want to see this solved, there's only one way to do it. Or if you want to see it solved in a humane manner, there's only one way to do it, and that is to elect more Democrats.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll say on the border is, again, I have major issues, like Cypher said, with this relatively conservative. I mean, you see Langford's fingerprints all over it. Senate bill. Obviously, it's eminently more humane, and to the extent that it's liberal or progressive at all, it's much more so than a House bill, including one of the provisions that unaccompanied minors will have public defenders. It's mandatory that they get representation, which is another major bare fucking minimum progressive policy to give unaccompanied minors into the United States legal representation. But I think that Democrats should try to use this in the same cynical way that Republicans have done. I think Biden should give it an aggressive effort at the State of the Union. I think that Democrats, even if you don't agree with the substance of the bill, like most, Bernie Sanders and a lot of progressives justifiably have major issues with the Langford, Sinema, Murphy bill. But I think you should try to use it as a cudgel as well against Republicans, especially when there's some polling to indicate that there is potential for success if the American people are educated as to why this thing died in the first place, which is pure cynical politics. That's my beef on, or that's my situation with it. So I guess we'll move on to the remainder of the conversation, which is Super Tuesday. So I haven't been tracking it religiously, but does anyone think that Nikki Haley's going to walk away with the Republican nomination? You don't think so?
Absolutely not. What Democrats can hope for, though, is that she gets enough of people backing her that she can justify staying in, and that just means getting more money from more moderate Republicans that want to see somebody to fight Trump some more. If absent that, I haven't looked at it at all today. I voted today, or on this side, I voted today, but I just don't see it happening. So,
Tyler, what about you, buddy? You think
she's there?
One upset.
She's there if Trump trips real bad, or if one of the lawsuits goes through, or something.
True.
She has a chance. No chance at all.
Yeah.
What about you think Dean Phillips is going to sneak an upset away from the president, or failing that, will he honor his pledge? He made a public pledge that if he basically gets shellacked Super Tuesday, he'll drop out and support the president.
Oh, I'm not worried about Dean Phillips. I'm worried about Orb Mother. All hail Marianne Williamson, who unsuspended her campaign due to the success of the Michigan none of the above uncommitted vote. She unsuspended her campaign and told people to go out and vote for her to lodge a protest against Biden for his Israeli policy. So this will be interesting. I think that's going to be the most interesting thing to see how much sway she actually has from that. If people like myself, voted for Williamson as a protest vote. Now, for me, for anybody watching this, if Biden's going to be the nominee, I'm going to support Biden in the general election. But this is the only way that I have to lodge a protest against Biden to make him realize that our Israeli policy is just untenable. And it seems to have somewhat worked already. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of that going.
Yeah. So I'll say this, I typically stay out of foreign policy, but when I've been doing interviews or conversations here lately on other people's streams and I get asked about it, my position is I don't take any issue at all with people trying to leverage their vote in the primary with the uncommitted campaign. Some people are like, don't do it, it's going to hurt Biden. There's a risk that it may have some downstream effect in the general by depressing the vote. That's possible. I don't rule it out. But and Tyler can weigh in a minute if he wants. But I think that you have the right to try to extract concessions from politicians, and right now the only way to do that in the primary, unless you're a multi-gazillionaire, is to withhold your vote and to encourage others to do so as well. Now, as I've also said, there are obviously some people, especially on Twitter, and I try to ignore people on Twitter because Twitter is not real life. It's the least trafficked of all major social media companies and has not done very well under Elon Musk. But when I see a Twitter personality say that there's nothing Biden can do to earn back my vote, that's stupid, unless you're a Republican, because you forfeit your leverage there. So like if I'm a political candidate and Cypher tells me, Josiah, there's nothing you can do to get back my vote, that's cool. I'll just go shopping for Tyler at this point. And Tyler might, yeah, I'll give you my vote and you need my vote to get reelected, but I want concessions out of you. So I think Cypher's is doing it the correct way, which is lodge a protest vote in the primary to try to get the candidate to make a move that you think is better, right? I'm sure that in the end, the general election, Cypher will vote for President Biden if Biden is the nominee, which he almost certainly will be. But that's my policy. Tyler, do you have any issues with people in a primary leveraging their vote against any candidate?
I kind of wanted to more talk about your latter part of that. So we have right here, we have two border bills. I think that the best solution is somewhere in the middle of them for the most amount of people. That can kind of wait and go through the normal process of government. What we urgently need was the funding to Ukraine, who is 6 months behind, and the funding to Israel. And we need to urgently get over to both of them. And that's why the gas has to be put on this situation so fucking hard. Because those two, Ukraine especially, but Israel also needs the money. So just to kind of alleviate some of your guys' concern, I just want to kind of bring up the whole anti-Biden genocide Joe leftist thing. The last safe hold for Hamas right now is Rafah at the southern tip of Gaza. The Hamas just rejected the 6-week ceasefire. So Israel's probably going to go into Rafah pretty soon here, and that'll be the end of the war. And it's going to be a good 6 months of general election, of Trump bashing, of Trump saying all sorts of things. I guarantee you that 15%, 20%, whatever, 30% of the Democratic Party that feels this way, most of them are going to come home for the general election. Israel war is going to be in the past. Trump's going to be right in front of you. So I wouldn't be as concerned about those people that are up in arms right now as you might be in the current moment.
I don't think that it's going to keep Biden from being the nominee, and I don't think Cypher thinks it will be either. I suppose what I'm saying
the
is,
general.
Do you support in principle the right of people
to
withhold their votes in order to extract concessions from the candidate?
Yeah, whatever, do your thing. I think if you look at, I don't think you guys like Jimmy Dore, but I think his show's funny as hell, especially Ron Placone.
No, I don't.
It's so fucking good.
Cypher
so
notoriously, I just want to say this for the Cypher notoriously loves Jimmy Dore, folks.
No, your audience already doesn't like me. Why you gotta lie?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. No,
the comedian that he has on there, Ron Placone, look into that guy. He is hysterical. Anyways, Jimmy Dore was mad at at the squad because he wanted them to do what Matt Gaetz was doing to the Republicans. He wanted them to leverage their small majority in the narrow House majority, or their small group in the narrow House majority, to get their way in some policy. And he was pissed they never did. And
are you talking about the vote for speaker?
Yeah, vote for speaker.
Yeah, what is it? Something to vote. hold the vote.
He wanted to force the vote on
Force the vote.
Medicare for all, just to get it on record. That's it. He doesn't think it was going to pass. He just wanted to get it on record. And he was like exorcised or excoriated. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, I don't think anybody denied that the squad had the right to withhold the vote from Speaker Pelosi, but the way the math cut out at the time is that created the possibility of a Republican becoming Speaker of the House, because if you vote present, then that cuts down the total of people who votes for that position. So you're playing with live ammunition with force the vote. I think that was kind of the beef at the time. So, yeah, so there's that. Then, of course, there's been some bad polling for the president recently, but it's still within the margin of error. The Real Clear Politics and 538 average has it just down 2 points to Trump, which is within the margin of error. Are you, Cypher, how do you feel about the upcoming election? I'm a cynic by nature, so I'm always nervous. What about you?
Well, if the economy keeps going the way it is, if I continue to be right about inflation, as I've been right for the last year and a half, 2 years almost, I don't remember what it was.
Hey, buddy, you got something on your shoulder right here.
I mean, hey, you know what? You're right. When you're right, you're right. You know, shit.
Yeah.
One of the best calls I ever made. Because I was right to the fucking month. That was why I have to brag about it so much. But anyways, if things keep going the way they are going, it's going to be a close election. I think every election for the foreseeable future, probably until 2032, 2036, are going to be pretty close. But I don't see Biden actually losing, specifically because Republicans shot themselves in the foot with the border deal, because they kowtowed to Trump instead of saying, hey, this bill doesn't go far enough. They let Trump make that decision and said he wanted to campaign on it. It came out, he put it on Truth Social, all that stuff. And then, they don't have anything to really run on against that. And so that was like their one issue that was pushing moderates towards Republicans that still existed. Inflation down, that's starting to be not an issue for a lot of suburban people. The Israel Ukraine stuff, that's pushing more moderates to support Joe Biden, because he rightly called what the American people want with that, for the most part. Lefties aside, myself included on the aside part, not necessarily lefty. All this stuff, I don't think Joe Biden's going to lose. I think it's going to be close. There is a issue with Michigan, and he needs to do something to shore that up, because if a lot of Arab Americans do not vote in Michigan, that's a swing, right? Because Michigan's going to be close again. But it might not be 100,000 close, or it could be like it was in 2020. But if a lot of them don't vote, it's going to be dicey. So I think you got to shore that up. But yeah, I don't think he's going to lose.
Tyler, what about you, buddy?
Just to touch on that point in Michigan, when Obama ran uncontested in 2012, 12% of Michigan said that they were undecided or uncommitted to the candidate. When Biden went against the protest vote, only 13%. It only went up 1%. So that's really like, it was 6,000 people in the county that voted against Biden, that contains Dearborn, Michigan, which is like that town Republicans fearmonger about. So I don't think the Biden campaign has started running yet, and I don't think the Trump campaign has seriously started running yet against Biden. I think that Republicans, the smartest thing they could have done is shut down, for their own side, is shut down the border deal. Probably not good with moderates, and I think that's who you're addressing more. But the only people that really vote on immigration are right wingers. And if they would have conceded to a weak bill, they would have pissed their base off more than they would have absorbed independence. And I think that they need it. If you look at past elections during Reagan, when Reagan won that landslide election against Carter in 80, 40% of the United States identified as Democrat, and only 21% identified as Republican. So Democrats basically outnumbered Republicans 2-1, and there was still a landslide in their favor. That's where the neocons were. Neocons were liberals then, and switched over to the Republican Party after that. That being said, if you look at it now, according to Gallup, if you include independents that already lean a particular way, 42% versus 40% of the country, Republicans actually, for the first time in any election, have party size favor. So if the independent vote split middle and both parties have the exact same percentage of turnout, Republicans win for the first time in my life. So I think that it's looking pretty good. I think it depends on, there's so many factors that could go wrong. Like, what if Trump gets immunity? What if he doesn't? He gets convicted. That's a huge one. What if Saudi Arabia gives Biden the finger and decides his Republican light drill baby drill 2023 policy, they don't want to be on board anymore, and it spikes the price of gas. There's so many what ifs that could happen. I really think it's going to come down to that 20% of people that are going to be undecided, who pisses them off less in the last week before the election.
You mentioned the immunity thing. Obviously, the Supreme Court made the decision 9-0 as to whether or not states can kick presidential candidates off the ballot. So I know from previous conversations, Tyler, you support the outcome of that, correct?
Oh yeah.
Cypher?
Yeah, I support the outcome of it for the reason that all the justices agreed that it would have just been a shit show. I thought that this was always going to be the case. I also thought that the justices were going to be cowardly in that by basically saying, I didn't think they were going to give him like immunity, right? So they didn't give him immunity, but I thought they were going to be cowardly and not wanting to step into the political realm.
Wait a minute, to be clear, the immunity decision from the Supreme Court hasn't been decided yet.
No,
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. So what I mean by that is like they didn't adjudicate on any of the facts of the Colorado decision.
Oh, sure.
They didn't say that Trump can't be prosecuted about it at all. They didn't buy his argument that he's not an officer of the United States. Sure. They didn't do any of that stuff, and I didn't think that they would. I thought all those arguments were bunk, and I told Rob Noor and other people as such that they were smoking some good stuff, thinking that they were going to roll that way. But I did think that it was going to be a fairly close decision, if not unanimous.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I never doubted, and most people didn't doubt, that the outcome was going to favor Trump. I think a lot of people thought it might be, a 6-3 vote. Then after oral arguments, it looked increasingly like a 9-0 decision because even the liberal justices were skeptical, seemingly because of the practical considerations. To your point, it is interesting. They did not overturn any of the Colorado Supreme Court's findings that Donald Trump is an insurrectionist, that January 6th is an insurrection, that the president is an officer, that all the things. They simply basically made a practical decision. They opposed the patchwork approach of states removing presidential candidates off, which, by the way, it's fascinating to me. Let's see what you make of this, because don't you think that was a political consideration from an apolitical body?
No, did you read they talked about how Colorado misread the amendment, how Trump is not an officer, how the amendment doesn't say he can't run for office, it says he can't hold office. They talked about how the states don't have the right over federal proceedings as well. They talked about how Colorado read the amendment wrong and corrected them on certain things as well.
I do not recall. You're telling me that the Supreme Court in that 20-page decision, I don't recall them saying that the president is not an officer. Did they say that?
I'm pretty sure they did, yeah. President's not an officer. He can't be disqualified based on the 14th Amendment. I'm pretty sure that was one of the points they brought up.
No, I don't think so. That was not in any of the. That is not in my reading. They didn't adjudicate that, as far as I know. They said that the state, the primary thing was that they said the states couldn't do it because in the constitutional amendment, it says that the Congress has to pass a law, and that was what they hung their hat on. They hadn't passed a law yet.
Yeah,
well, they could still impeach him.
I just hit Control F on this because I read it. It's a 20-page thing, and I made my notes in it. But I just hit Control F. Officer is used 8 times, and they say they use it when they quote Section 3. You know what? Fuck it. Let me just bring the thing up right here. Oh, I just didn't do that to begin with. Sorry. Let's make it big. Let's do officer. Their theory turns on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Then, of course, they quote Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So that's 1 and 2. Then the court held that Section 3 did not apply because the presidency, which Section 3 does not mention by name, is not in office, and the president is not an officer, reversing the district court's opinion. So basically, they mention it in all the recapping of the legal history, and then they never say that the president is or is not an officer of the United States.
I might have to read through it again. Again, I was kind of confused by some of this. It's in legal jargon. It's hard to read. There's footnotes all over the place. I might have to read it again, but that was my understanding of it, is that he,
No. Yeah, no.
and
That
it,
I'm
it
with I'm
doesn't bar him from running from office as well. It only bars him from holding office.
right. So that's a separate matter. That's a separate matter because he's not an office holder at the moment. He's a candidate. But at
Mm.
no point does the United States Supreme Court reverse the Colorado Supreme Court's finding that the president is an office and that the president, or excuse me, that the president is an officer and the
Mm.
presidency is an office. They leave all of those questions alone, which to me is telling, because they could have, as the highest court in the land, said, nope, Colorado fucked this all up. The president is not an officer. The presidency is not an office. And January 6th is not an insurrection. And Trump is not an insurrectionist. So I found that pretty fascinating too. Um, do you think that this was a political decision? Either of you? Do either of you think that this was a political decision by them? Or yes,
It
but not
depends.
entirely, or no, not at all?
Depends on how broadly you want to use the term political, because I feel like you could really qualify if you stretch that term a little bit. Worrying about other states just saying he's an insurrectionist because a judge decreed it, and then we're going
Yeah,
to take Biden off I think that
I think
problem
that's the
is a political
political
solution.
Yeah, I think that's what they ruled on, and I don't think it was necessary calorie. I think that's obviously correct, but I think that's still like a political question. So they ruled on it in that way, but it was a good reason to do it. While we were streaming, apparently Kirsten Sinema announced that she is not seeking re-election in Arizona and will not go into three-way race. So wanted to point that out.
No, yeah, that was earlier today, baby. That was you.
Okay.
You missed that one.
I
But
missed
yeah,
it. All right. I just
yeah.
saw
So
a 2 hours ago update, and I'm like, wait a second, what? So
no, so yeah, Kirsten Sinema is not seeking re-election, so it's down to Ruben Gallego and Kerry Lake, and obviously that Arizona's a purple state, but right now the polling and the funding favor Gallego, which is good. Unlike West Virginia with Manchin out, that's it. We lose that seat. Democrats lose that seat. It's going to be a tough, really tough map for Democrats this election cycle.
In the Senate,
Yes.
not the House.
Yes, in
Yeah.
the Senate. Yeah, the House favors Democrats. So we answered the question about the 14th Amendment. You both agree with the top line decision, and for similar reasons. The immunity case is coming up. I don't think that the Supreme Court will grant Trump immunity. But what's interesting about this court is they don't have to make overbroad decisions if they want. They can come up if they really want to get creative with some gerrymandered outcome which favors Trump, while also saying just as a general principle, presidents are not entitled to absolute legal immunity. What do you think? Do you think that the court will say presidents are entitled to that level of immunity, or no, just Trump in this case because January 6th was an official duty? Or do you think the whole thing is going to go against Trump?
I think
You go. You go.
Yeah, sorry. I think Alito and Thomas are going to rule in favor of Trump because they wanted a unity executive. I don't see Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, or Kavanaugh or Roberts ruling in Trump's immunity favor. Even though Roberts is one of the people that did want a unity executive, I don't see it happening because he cares about his legacy, and if he did that, his legacy would die. So I don't see that happening.
Tyler, what about you, buddy?
The prerequisites leading up to this, first of all, are hilarious. Jack Smith wanted to skip the appeals court and go right to the Supreme Court, and he begged them to pick up the case. And in the time that they were considering it, the appeals court ruled in a way that actually really benefited Jack Smith. And now that the Supreme Court's picking it up, people are pissed at the SCOTUS. Like, he didn't beg them to do it. So, anyways, I don't know, man.
Well,
This is
Tyler, with respect, I think you're muddying that a bit. So the
it's
Supreme
kind of
Court
funny.
declined. The Supreme Court declined to skip the DC Appellate Court before the DC Appellate Court made their decision. Number one, so that's one correction. Number two, the reason for doing that is because he knew Trump would appeal, so he wanted the Supreme Court to have the final word on it. Then, when they were like, "No, we're not going to touch it yet. We're kicking it back to the DC Appellate Court," I get the reason people are pissed is, well, if you were going to look at it anyway, and you've looked at cases like you've skipped rungs in the ladder before, if you think this is such a novel constitutional question, which they do, then why didn't you just skip the step? Basically, the reason people are pissed is because it looks very much like they're helping Trump run the clock out. Like, yeah, this question is something we definitely need to consider, but no, we need this first step first. Okay, this first step's complete.
The
Okay, we're going to
proper
look at it.
steps.
I'm sorry?
It's the proper steps. Jack Smith was trying to beg them to skip a step and go right to the court so they can expedite it. It's not a judicial consideration when the court date takes place. It's a judicial consideration to make sure all the prerequisites are done properly.
Well, it's not. So it's not a prerequisite. That's the problem. The Supreme Court, it's not common, or it's not like the standard approach. But to be very clear, the United States Supreme Court has granted writs of certiorari where they've reviewed cases and skipped appellate steps. They've done that. They've said, let's take it from this district to the Supreme Court and skip whichever court of appeals is in between. They've done that before. So what Jack Smith was proposing was not commonplace, but it wasn't like once every 300 years does this happen. It's happened before, and it's happened with enough regularity that's why Smith asked for it. So I think it's go ahead.
Sorry, it's your show, man.
No, please go ahead.
It would have been proper for the Supreme Court to hear it simply because of timing. The quicker that this gets adjudicated, the quicker that it becomes not an issue, the quicker it becomes not a political issue, all that other stuff. So if they would have actually taken up the case without the appellate court's ruling, they would have been, in my opinion, a proper thing to do given the timing. And that's generally speaking when they actually skip the appellate process, if it's something that is necessary to do for timing situations.
I mean, right. You're telling me it does happen sometimes, and it happens enough to be considered regular, but the proper way is the way the Supreme Court said to do it, and you don't always, so like, I would rather them do it by the books, and I don't think that the Supreme Court cares when this is tried because it's not a consideration. It's still going to get done. There's still a chance.
But here's the question though. But they do. The Supreme Court makes these considerations all the time. Note with this case, the Colorado Supreme Court case, what happened? They took this thing up immediately on an expedited basis over whether or not Trump is constitutionally eligible to run for office. And they did it before the primary. So this is my beef with, I'm not saying you're necessarily like this, Tyler, but people who think that the Supreme Court is this apolitical body that makes these enlightened alien decisions irrespective of political consideration. It's not true. Because if that were the case, then when Donald Trump is like, please, holy shit, the primary is coming up, I need to know if I'm constitutionally eligible to hold office, they should have been like, fuck you, we'll get to it on our own good time, and scheduled it for May. Why didn't they do that? Well, they did it because there was a fair, and I say this as somebody who doesn't like Trump, it's fair that they took the question before the Republican primary, because people should know if Donald Trump is constitutionally eligible to hold office, that could have an impact on the election one way or another. But when it comes to a way that is potentially against Trump, which is hearing this in an expedited basis, which will allow him to stand trial before the election, then they drag their feet. That's fair game to criticize, my friend.
Will that make him constitutionally ineligible to hold office if he's convicted of the 3 counts of conspiracy and 1 of obstruction?
No.
Then the concession you're giving to the first consideration is not applicable to the second one.
No. Well, no. What I'm saying is, Donald Trump, when they agreed to hear Donald Trump's 14th Amendment case, they did it in a timeline which benefited him because it would resolve the question before people were going to cast ballots for Trump. The same logic applies here, except where one potentially benefits Trump, the other potentially harms Trump. Mm-hmm. And if the Supreme Court is an apolitical body, then they would have been uniform in their decisions, meaning if they granted expedited basis to this case, because Trump could be potentially impacted one way or another in the election, then it should have been the same logic applies here.
I get your through line now. I get it.
Yeah.
Can I just point out real quick?
Sure.
Steve Skeletal said this is a rouge court. Everyone point and laugh at him. He spelled rogue wrong. Terrible.
Rogue wrong? Yeah. Yeah. So, but the question is, so my problem is like, how can you justify that?
I mean, I get what you're saying. I kind of think my first question is kind of where I go with that. I don't know. I get what you're saying. I see your through line. I see why you're pissed off about it. I just think that if Donald Trump got convicted of 3 counts of conspiracy and 1 of obstruction, he's not charged with insurrection or incitement of the riot. So if he got charged with federal insurrection, he would be disqualified from the ballot. And if that was the charge, then I would say absolutely expedite that shit immediately, because people need to know if he's eligible for office. I'm just seeing
But
the
don't
two.
but don't people also need to know and want to know? Like
It is a
doesn't
good
the
point. I'm not saying your point's
yeah.
wrong. I get it. I totally get it, and I sympathize toward it. I'd have to think about it a little more to see if it's the predominant point. But I totally get what you're saying.
Hang on one second. Though all of us who read it know the all of us who read
She's behind.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was about to say I'm very confused. Like, wait, what? No, we agree. We were helping Tyler out because he misunderstood the ruling about the
Yeah,
Supreme
yeah.
Court. Yeah.
I didn't get the through line to the comparison. I'm
No,
good
no,
now. I
no.
got it.
Somebody was asking about
Oh,
whether or not the presidency is an office and what the Supreme Court
oh
stated.
yeah, yeah. I got to
So
read that again. My bad.
yeah.
My bad. Sorry. Fake news.
So Georgiana says, but Tyler, there are people who won't vote for Trump if he's convicted, even though he can still
Yeah,
run.
I totally get that. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
wasn't getting what you were meaning by
Fair
that.
enough. Fair enough. So, what do you think about that, Cypher? Do you think they're acting politically here? It sure looks like it to me.
Oh, I was about not taking up the case quickly.
Yeah. Or even if they didn't grant to expedite, like even if they didn't allow Jack Smith to skip a step, the fact that we're not going to have oral arguments on this thing until the end of April.
Yeah, I don't know. Because it's still happening before. I think they should quickly decide. They should definitely decide the case before November if it's possible. And it's possible the Supreme Court can release its decisions pretty much whenever. And I think that's what they should do. Granting it sooner rather than later is better, but as long as they don't continuously drag their feet with the releasing of it, if they don't, like, who knows, it might be an October surprise, everybody. Like, we'll see. But
that's the thing, like
as long as it's before the election, I don't personally have a problem with it.
If the decision is made before the election, or if the decision is made before the election with enough time for the trial to begin. The trial. So remember, right now, the Supreme Court, to clarify for the audience, the Supreme Court issued a stay associated with their writ of certiorari, which means that none of the federal cases against Trump can proceed until it's determined whether Trump has immunity or not.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear what. Yeah, I misremembered. So yes, that's probably political, and I think it only requires 4 justices to make those determinations. Right, it doesn't require a majority. So
also, there's some DOJ policy. I don't know it offhand. It came up during the whistleblower hearing under Comer.
It's not going to go through for this. From what I understand, it's a 90-day ruling that they don't take court cases during an election within 90 days of an election, but it has been waived probably because the Supreme Court drug their feet. So
okay, cool. Just curious.
At least that's my understanding. People fact check me on that. I read that like 4 different places, but I didn't dive deeply into it. So
he's psychic. He knew exactly what you're talking about, Tyler. He didn't even let you get to the end of that fucking sentence.
No, that's perfect. That's the people I like to talk to.
I know what this guy's about to say. No.
I'd rather talk to somebody I don't have to educate in order to have a conversation with them. This has been great.
Well, I don't know. It's definitely pretty controversial stuff going on. We'll see what happens. I definitely want to have that conversation with Pisco and a couple of attorneys just about the Supreme Court in general, because one of the things I like to do is kind of a mental exercise, and I've loved to do this for years, is like basically Republican proof a government. Come up with this hypothetical government that you could make durable from a bad faith actor, right? So that's why I say Republican proof, because it's a party of bad faith actors. And it's impossible to do so, because any system that you come up with is predicated on reciprocal good faith. And I think you could probably do certain things better. There were improvements made to democratic republics who took inspiration from the United States. We have the oldest continuous democratic republic with the oldest codified single document constitution. and a lot of people took their notes from us, and then they improved on the method. So we're the only nation, the only democratic republic on earth with an electoral college, because the ones that did adopt it after us were eventually like, fuck this, we don't need this. This is insane. Do it. And are you all, Cypher? Do you, Tyler? Where are you all on the electoral college? Support it, oppose it?
I kind of see the original intent on it, and I kind of like, people don't like bureaucrats, and I get that, but I'm a pro-institution guy. I'd like to take away the ability to vote for senators again and go back to how it was, how they were appointed by the state, because then we would have actual professionals that don't have to worry about fundraising 40% of their day, for going on camera and being intentionally disingenuous to rile up their base and things like that. I want a serious branch of government that maybe it lacks accountability, but it's full of professionals that are there to get the job done. And I feel like politicizing it made it go downhill.
I doubt that was ever really the case, and why we had the 17th Amendment. Is that the one? I don't remember all the amendments orders, but why we got that one in the first place, because somebody was literally buying their seat from the state legislature. And especially in small states, it's a lot easier to buy up small state legislatures than it is for big state ones, hence why the Koch brothers have their strategy that they have. But absent that, I think the Electoral College should be done away with. Or alternatively, if you think that it has a modicum of moderating effect, at least make it proportional. That way that my vote in Texas still counts, and that way a Democrat in Texas vote still counts, a Republican in California counts. Would that make it more likely that the House has to decide the election? Yes. Maybe that'll make people care about the House elections more. I don't know. But it's one or the other. I don't like the current system is not good. We can get
Tyler,
rid of it.
I'm gonna pick on you for a minute. I'm just Tyler, my Clinton Democrat buddy, is in favor of anything which advantages the Republican Party. I'm still trying to square this, buddy. I'm still trying. Give me something. I want to know give me something where it's an unambiguous win for the Democrats that you enthusiastically support.
I would say that the SCOTUS and the Electoral College have benefited the Democrats, maybe not as much in recent history, but if you look a little bit back, they've benefited the Democrats, especially the SCOTUS, a lot more than they have the Republicans. For a decade,
we haven't had a liberal majority on the Supreme Court in 50 years.
Yeah, but
and the
Roberts
Electoral College,
come on,
like, bro, no, see, this is, bro, I want you to be serious here. You in every interaction that we have, everything you defend advantages the Republicans. Everything. I've not seen a single thing where you're like, no, fuck the Republicans. This is one system where they get the shaft and I'm all for it. Give me something. I want to know what institution that you either would create or that you support, because the Electoral College advantages Republicans. The Supreme Court hasn't had a liberal majority in however many years. You favor immunity for presidents, which right now advantages the Republicans because the Republicans are the ones pushing for it. Democrats are not. Give me something. Clinton Democrat, Mr. Clinton Democrat, give me something. Josiah, here's your win. Here's this one institution where the Republicans are super fucked.
You should have watched Wick the other day, because he agreed. He said the same thing that I'm kind of saying right now. These institutions might look like they benefit Republicans more right now, but I'm telling you, leave these in place, because in the long run, they benefit Democrats a lot too.
I fight with Wick all the time, and Wick is also an institutionalist, even when it advantages Republicans. He and I brawl about that all the time. He is much harsher on Democrats when it comes to institutions than Republicans. We brawl about it all the time. But I'm asking you, Wick is not here. Give me something. And if you can't give me something, I would invite you to reconsider where your political allegiance is. Because if I could right now describe myself as a Republican, but would anybody believe me? No, because everything I support advantages, for the most part, the Democrats. So I would say that there's an incongruity here. No Clinton era Democrat would favor institutions which overwhelmingly advantage the opposition. Bill Clinton would not support. Yeah, man, fuck that. Like, so give me something. Is there something you can think of?
No, I see. That's the thing, is like the institutions, I don't want to change the rules of them. I want everyone to play within the rules. That's all. If they advantage them today, they're going to advantage you tomorrow. I don't know, man. I don't think there is a system I would tear down unless someone could show me it's actually causing more harm than good.
But
like,
well, wait a minute. But
I
institutions in the
mean,
United States change, right? They have changed. Like
mhm,
slavery was an institution. We got rid of that. Voting's an institution. We've democratized voting. We made it much better because there was a time that voting, you could only vote if you were a white landowning male,
mhm.
right? Clearly
In
you
some
advantaged,
states, yeah.
right? So clearly you favored that. So wouldn't making the Electoral College is anti democratic by its very nature, right? Because it can be mutually exclusive with the popular vote, and no other democratic republic on earth uses it. None, like even ones that used to have it, were like, no, this makes no sense, and got rid of it. It's a relic. Um, so I'm kind of perplexed if we have changed institutions over time in this country. Why are you afraid to change them now?
I
And why does
mean,
it seem that you're only afraid to change them when they currently advantage Republicans?
I just would have to see something that is a better plan, and I feel like having these institutions in place for hundreds of years shows that they work. Like one guy voted against George Bush, and a couple people said they would have voted against Donald Trump if their district went that way. But like for the most part, they work. I don't see why we like. Why
What
do we
does
get
they
rid of the
work?
Electoral
Well,
College?
what is I don't what is that? What is it? What do you mean it works?
You just want to do the popular vote for the presidency? Okay, I'm down for that. But the Electoral
Yeah.
College, like I mean, the districts more than anything are how we allocate certain things. Like we do the census and allocate taxes to certain areas. Maybe you're right. I don't know. I just would have to see like the pros
oh,
and cons. I've never really even thought of it really.
yeah, the
Electoral
Electoral
College,
College doesn't do the split up of
yeah.
the states, the split up of money or the district sizes or anything else like that. That's straight population, straight two people, two senators per state.
Yeah.
The Electoral College only handles the presidential election.
I mean, we could go to a popular vote. I wouldn't care about that so much. We do it with senators within the state. Like, I'm not opposed to it. I don't like tearing down things just to tear them down. I'd like a good reason to do
Well,
so.
sure.
Like,
Well, to be clear, neither do I. Again, this is the example I use to Wick is the filibuster. I don't believe in abolishing the filibuster because I think the filibuster is a tool. It can be used properly and it can be used improperly, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just believe number one in making it harder for the So in times past, there was the standing filibuster, meaning Tyler, you have a bill. Senator Tyler and Senator Cipher have a bill and it's pretty popular. But I, Senator Josiah, who represent the minority, I don't like your bill, and I want to filibuster it. Basically, the idea was I have a chance, I have a shot to kill your bill, but the burden is on me. So I had to stand there and talk nonstop and run out the clock, or you all could kick back and do whatever, because that was the trade-off. The trade-off was your shit was more popular, so it should by default have an advantage, and I get the opportunity to kill it, but all of the burden is on me to do it. Whereas now the way the filibuster works is you just threaten it, you don't call a quorum, and then the threatening party, the Republicans, can literally leave, and the party with the majority, if they don't have the 60 votes, they're the ones scrambling trying to whip votes. It's ass backwards. You see what I'm saying?
it's the rules of the Senate. They're self-regulating. Of course, they'd self-regulate so they could go sit on their asses. Like, they change the rules around all the time. Like whenever they get in there, so they can do whatever they want. Yeah, they self-regulate. That's kind of
When the average age of the senator got to 66 is when they said we don't have to maintain Senate floor to do a filibuster.
exactly.
Too old, my knees are bad. Let's stop this stuff.
Can we add amendments for walkers?
Okay, amendments. Another one. I mentioned this earlier. I can't remember if you all were here, but a constitutional amendment. Our Constitution is the hardest to amend in the world. There have been 12,000 attempts at amendments in the 250 years that the United States has existed, and we only have 27 amendments. That's a fraction of 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 a fraction. Like, that's insane. I understand it shouldn't be by a simple majority, right? I believe in a democratic republic where some things are outside the purview of a simple majority. If you want to make sweeping changes to civil rights, or if you want to impeach somebody and remove them from power, you should need more than just 50% plus one. But generally speaking, I think that if you have the majority, you should be able to govern, right? I like people talk about a tyranny of the minority or tyranny of the majority, but what about a tyranny of the minority? That's not more righteous, right? This idea. So to me, it's like if I had to crude it, make it like a super crude, I think 8 out of 10 issues, a simple majority should be sufficient to govern. And then the other two things, constitutional amendments or impeaching and convicting somebody, that's where you should require super majorities. That makes sense because you're making major changes to either other branches of Congress or other branches of government or to the founding document, the Constitution. But why is everything so fucking hard in this country, and why should it be left that way? I don't know.
Slow moving government usually gets the job done better. Again, we got 2 border bills. If they do what government intends and sit down, we could get a really great border bill that takes parts from both, makes both, let's say catch and release. Republicans don't like it. Democrats say they won't get rid of it. So we do catch and release, but we act like how they do parole in the criminal system. This person's not a flight risk. There's a very high chance they're going to show up for the court date. So we'll catch and release that person in particular, whereas we won't just catch and release 30,000 people we got from Nicaragua. Like there could be different regulations put on it. I really feel like government moves slow because it's deliberate. And once you put that thing into law, it's very hard to change it.
See, but here's my beef. And again, we're talking in the abstract now. I understand that government is not meant to be the most agile of constructs. But even right there, what you just articulated, that's a conservative government. That advantages the right. So where's my advantage as a lefty? I need you to give me something. We're talking about compromise, right? Everything you call for advantages the right, and it drives me up the wall. I want my shit. Give me my shit, Tyler. What's my shit? Where give me my advantage? Where do I
do
get
a
the
very good job playing within the rules as well? I don't see they just won the last election. They do a very good job doing everything the way it's intended right now.
It is playing politics for the Republican Party is like it's a video game. It's on easy mode. You have the cheats enabled. Like you have to go out of your way to deliberately fuck things up if you're a Republican. And yes, we've won the last several elections, which should just go to show you how bad this iteration of the GOP is. I mean, like, I even think about the House of Representatives. That was supposed to be the compromise for the more populous states, right? Because the Senate advantages rural states by definition, right? When you lock the number of senators in the upper chamber, that means, it disproportionately benefits rural states. But the idea was, hey, okay, well, listen, more populated states, more liberal areas, because there's a correlation between, liberality and population. Here's your advantage. You get the House, basically, because, it's proportional. But because of Republican gerrymandering, right now, those motherfuckers have the House. The House is always competitive. So it's like, I'm like, okay. So the Electoral college advantages the Republicans, the modern day Republicans. The Senate advantages the Republicans. The House is basically a toss-up. The Supreme Court has had a conservative majority for 50 years. There are 30 states that have Republican legislatures. And so it's just like, I'm looking. Where's my where is it, Tyler? Give me my buff here. Give me my thing. Give me my +5. Where's my shit? Cypher, where's my shit? Where is it? I want it. Give it to me. I'm owed it.
Well, I mean, if you're asking me, we get rid of political gerrymandering and put it into a non-gerrymandered thing. We go with single transferable vote, multi-member districts to make it more fair and give people more choices. We do ranked choice voting in that so that we have instant runoff. We get rid of the filibuster. We amend the filibuster to where it only is available for certain things. And in those things, you have to have, you can only do it like 3 times. So each party, during a term, each party can, every 6 years, 3 times, you get 3. Timeout rules, get 3 of them. You can only filibuster 3 times. I don't know. This is just, that's just one of those ideas.
Do you hear that?
The Electoral college.
Do you hear that, Tyler? Like, is your temperature rising? Mine is.
No.
Get a little hot under the collar.
I completely understand it, but I'm of the opposite view. I want to force both sides to work together. I want to make it so anytime you need to pass a piece of policy, the minority party has to have at least 25% of their party voting for it. I want things that force
Then
Democrats.
that makes there's no incentive for them to do it, because you can always have an extreme has your extreme side be 25% and nothing would get accomplished. And Republicans don't like things getting accomplished right now. They want less government, and that means less legislation, less regulations, less taxes, yada yada yada. So if they can hold the line, they're going to hold the line. There's no incentive there for them to compromise.
At a federal
Yeah,
level,
even with the filibuster, there's no incentive there.
Yeah, not to pick, because that's the thing. This is where I think you're starting to see a bit more of my genuine frustration with it, because it's deep. Because I hear what you're saying on paper, in a West Wing style universe where both parties have genuine disagreements, but there's no bad faith. It's just genuine disagreements. We're above board. What we say on Tuesday is exactly the same as it is on Wednesday, unless you persuade us otherwise, but it's all in good faith. It's not hyper cynical partisan bullshit. I agree, Tyler. I love the idea of that. That's not what we have. And so when one party's message for 40 years has been government sucks and it's broken, when that is the ethos, when they are incentivized to not get things done, because then they can say, hey, Washington's broken, send me back there. And then they reelect the same people who helped break it. That's what I meant by 20 minutes ago when I said government requires reciprocal good faith. And what even Wick will not deny. You appeal to Wick. I'll use Wick because Wick, unfortunately, is much more sympathetic to the enlightened centrist than I would like. I'm trying to break him of that. Even Wick will tell you there is just objectively more good faith coming from the Democratic Party, and for years, than the Republican Party. And so to Cypher's point, if you and I have to work, if we're in a three-legged race, that's government. That's what you want. That's your metaphor. You want a three-legged race of government. But if all I do is drop to the ground and hug your fucking leg, what do you?
That's exactly how Republicans have been.
Yeah,
Reagan,
bro, you have to admit after a while, then I should have the right to just grab you by your collar and drag you, and then get all the credit. I get the trophy and you get the shame. We have to fix this.
I think a little bit of it is I heard the characterization of the Republican Party. They're not anti-government. They're just anti-federal government. They want it passed down to the state level. Now, you said the GOP.
But on that, okay, so we can have it. We should, Josiah. I'm challenging you right now. Average debate, enjoyer Tyler. We can have this debate on this channel again. This is going to go on for hours if we start this.
Yeah,
I am 100% down to
Tyler,
do that.
Put a fucking pin in that, because man.
I disagree with that so much.
Just this is going to be the picture was me going, when you said they're anti-federal government. What
they are.
I mean, they are.
Republicans are. I'm pro. I love our federal institutions. I'm with the neocons and the neoliberals on that one. But more old school conservatives, like Doug Burgum. Go watch Doug Burgum's performance in the debates. Everything was 10th Amendment, abortion's a states' right. This is a states' right. Did you know under the original Constitution as well, you weren't allowed to just prescribe a national religion to the federal government, but the states were allowed to adopt a statewide religion.
They want little kingdoms. They want the Confederacy back. Like that. This is not states' rights, though.
It's their version of federalism.
No, they don't. Hang on. They don't want federal government until they do. See, I reject the premise wholeheartedly. It would be bad enough if the premise was true, but what's really bad is they hate the federal government until they need the federal government. So it's
because as soon as they can get an abortion ban in, they're going to do it.
Oh, bro.
But
some of them will.
But on the state issue, we can have that debate, because I don't think they actually want actual government on the state level either, based on all the things they pursued over the last 50 years.
Our mission is going to be, by the end of the year, Tyler here, he's going to be this is my commitment to you all. Tyler is going to publicly commit to abolishing the Electoral College. He's going to support radical Supreme Court reform. He's going to want to expand the court. He's going to want term limits. He's going to want judicial veto override. That's what he's going to want. And I'm making that commitment right now. It's going to happen. I can't wait when we finally have our final review of this the day before the election. And Tyler's like, you know what? Damn it. Bring on that packed court. Pack that court. Pack it like a suitcase before you're going on vacation. You just cram so many justices in there. Abolish the Electoral College. Let's elect our presidents by popular vote. And then Cypher and I are going to be looking on with tears in our eyes
I'd say your argument that you gave me already on the Electoral College, like I'm already going to have to sit down and think about that one because I can't think of a good practical reason for it in 2024. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, listen, fellas, in all seriousness, I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. I know both of you, I'm sure, I haven't seen all the comments, but I'm sure both of you pissed off chat in
I
more
know
than
I
a
did.
few ways. Yeah. I know Tyler did too. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for egalitarian, dispersing the displeasure there. But I do appreciate you coming on. I'm glad to know that your disagreements on the border were not nearly as harsh as I thought they were, even though I think there were major substantive issues there. So if you guys just want to shout yourselves out as far as like your general worldview, don't take 30 minutes and then your channels like, hey, I'm a so-and-so and I believe this is my major issue. This is my major issue. You can find me here. You can go ahead and do that.
Sure.
Start with Tyler.
Average debate enjoyer. My channel sucks right now. I hired an editor. Going to be working on it. I want to theory craft policy on YouTube. I want to take people from all over the political spectrum, throw some ideas I have at them. They throw some ideas at me, and we actually try to develop real policy. Currently, I thought of a affordable housing program that right wingers might actually sign on to, and a patent and copyright restructuring that would help with income inequality that right wingers might also agree with because these are left wing ideas, things like that. But that's not kicking off as well as I hoped it would. Average debate enjoyer, if you want to check any of that out. I just love debate. I don't want any of your money, no Patreon or anything like that. Just let me come argue with you. That's all I care about.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Cypher.
All right. Well, everybody, my name is Cypher. I have a YouTube channel called Cypher Report where we give you the tools, information, and analysis you need in order to grip the world. We recently underwent a rebrand where we're doing more of a essay and debate channel rather than a weekly news roundup. So you can find us there. And we try to produce one episode a week that's pretty in-depth about a certain topic with highly editing. Last episode was with my friend Nate Dallin. I did an interview with him. He's an immigration lawyer from Omaha, Nebraska. Mormon, conservative, but very understanding of immigration and the plight of immigrants. So if that's something you're into, go ahead and check that out. Try to get episodes published by Monday. Not always the case, but I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Josiah, for inviting me on again.
Absolutely, buddies. Listen, I appreciate it. I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to wrap up here with chat, but thanks for coming. We'll do this again very soon. And they said, thanks for the show, Josiah, Cypher, and Tyler. And that was Steve Skeletal who did it. Skeletal, whom you mocked for saying that there was a Rouge Court and he's being super polite to you, you prick. How do you feel about that, Tyler? How do you feel
Pretty
about
good.
that?
I feel pretty good.
Okay. All right. Cypher, Tyler, see you guys.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, folks, I appreciate that. Like I said, they had a very harsh disagreement on Twitter. I thought it would be harsher in person, but Tyler definitely softened on some of this, and yeah, it was good. Super Tuesday. Every time I talk about like our political system, I just get so like every time I like re-examine it and I think about all the ways in which it is biased for the right in this country is so aggravating. Let's see. First time in your live, Josiah. Thank you. Glad I clicked in, like your YouTube stuff. Appreciate that. Do you think Democrats increase activity in Arizona with Kirsten Sinema retiring this year? Yeah, we should. I think Progressive Victory and Destiny's Community, I think they're going to have some stuff to do. Maybe I'm making that up. In Arizona, they should, because it's a purple competitive state. Skeletal, I watch your videos almost every day, Josiah. Good stuff. Thank you. I appreciate that. Genuinely, I do. Steve Skeletal. And then Cypher Report here. That guy. Let me tell you something. That guy. Yeah, Cypher Report. Actually met him in Austin for an event with Destiny when Destiny debated. And then I debated Jack Posobiec briefly, and Destiny debated him on a panel, and Alex Jones, of all people. It was a shit show. But yeah, so let's see real quick before we clock out what is new on Super Tuesday. Woo! Trump is kicking butt except for Vermont. What? 326 delegates Haley has 43. The real question is, will Haley bend the knee and kiss the ring when she inevitably loses the primary? I hope she doesn't. I hope she stands by principle here, but Republicans are not known for being particularly principled, so I suppose that it's very likely. Let her hack Fear and Loathing on Super Tuesday with the Vanguard pod. I do like the guys at the Vanguard, even though we disagree on certain practical politics, I think it's fair to say, or partisan politics. Luke, President Biden is running away with the Democratic primary. Donald Trump is barely winning the Republican primary. I need to see where they're talking about. Cypher there. Too Raw, Too Real, Kenny. He's hilarious. You all should follow him. But yeah, interesting stuff. CNN, what does Donald Trump need to do to do differently to woo voters? Lindsey Graham says, I think need to make it a policy contest. Lindsey Graham wants Donald Trump to make it a policy contest with President Biden? Yeesh. Let's see. I hope she doesn't bend the knee either. Cypher report says, can't have an epic argument with reasonable people, both trying to convince the people that they're right. Trump has policies. Yeah, that's my question. Lost Highway says, I think it's a bad idea for her to bend the knee if Trump loses. MAGA's perma-dead 100%. Yeah, folks, that's where we are. So on Thursday, March 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be live streaming President Biden's State of the Union address. Starts at 9. I will start streaming at 8 to go over politics. As far as I know, there will be no debates. It'll just be me trying to catch up with politics, chatting with you all, and then we'll dive into the president's State of the Union. So yeah, any final questions or anything from you wonderful people or comments? Give it just a second here. That was great. Tyler did raise my blood pressure a bit. Mine too. I like Tyler as a person, but his politics infuriate me. I like your collaborations with Luke Beasley in person. That was fun to see. Yeah, Luke's a great guy. He's a good friend. He's a good buddy. I also met him in Austin. About the same time I met Cypher. And then he came to visit me in Charlotte to do some content. He was here for a day. He was in and out. But yeah, it was good. Got to meet my girlfriend, some of my buddies here. Luke's awesome. Luke's awesome. Good guy. Watch his videos too. You should. It's blowing up. It's blowing up. They're not principled at all. They're extremely partisan. If Democrats were 1/4 as partisan, we'd have nothing to worry about for November. Yeah, we need to be willing to pick more fights, I think. Stand our ground. But yeah. All right, folks, I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead. Green Brian. I can't read. I'm illiterate. It says Green Brain. Green Brain just came in here to look at that good-looking politics dude while he ponders. Oh my gosh, you talking about me? Why, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate you all. So again, Thursday, March 7th, 8 p.m. Eastern is when I'm going to start streaming. And then 9 p.m. is President Biden's State of the Union, which we will be live streaming and reacting to. Great shows. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all of you for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see you all Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Mark it down.